The rebirth system told me to choose a language, and I said, English. The system, okay, baby language. So, when I saw the domineering CEO dad who was making a name for himself in the industry boldly claim that he would personally raise his child, only to be utterly helpless after being cried at by his son, I stared at the baby in front of me yelling that the sock thread was snagging his toe and fell into deep thought. I yanked off the little CEO's sock and, under the displeased gaze of the CEO, Dad turned the sock inside out and put it back on his son. Hey, don't cry anymore. At that moment, in the CEO's eyes, I was like a deity. The moment I saw my CT6 score, a surge of fury hit my heart, and as if lightning struck fire into the ground, I fainted. When I faintly woke up, a robotic voice chanted all around me, you can choose to instantly learn a language. I spoke with numb, dazed sorrow. English, all right, the robot said, infant language. A blinding white light flashed, and everything before me changed. No longer was it the desktop piled with books and practice papers, with a phone on it displaying a score inquiry page, but instead a room, a spacious room. It looked like a baby's living room, because there was an entire wall of pacifiers, all kinds of them, displayed on it. Suddenly, an unhappy voice came from behind. I called you over to stand there spacing out. Before he could finish, a piercing wail rang out like a siren's song, deafening and shaking the room. From all directions, echoing endlessly in the vast chamber, I was already dazed by the crying, let alone the man holding the child. He looked to be about 185 centimeters tall, with broad shoulders and a narrow waist, wearing a white shirt. He gently held the child, swaying from side to side as he coaxed, don't cry, don't cry. He looked like a textbook married man, but at that moment, I didn't even have time to be shocked about why I was here, or to silently repeat that form is emptiness. Emptiness is form? This is someone else's husband. Don't look around, because I heard the baby in his arms, who couldn't have been more than a month old, speak, hook the foot, socks. I was dumbfounded, seeing me still standing there in a daze. The man looked displeased, but at least he had some manners and didn't show it too obviously. Amid the baby's loud cries, he said, he's hungry, why aren't you hurrying to make the formula? I numbly stepped forward and took off the child's socks. The man frowned. What are you doing? How did you even pass your certification? He's still so young, he can't take off his socks or he'll catch a chill. I turned the little sock inside out and put it on him backward. A miraculous thing happened. The child, who had been crying non-stop just a moment ago, calmed down. He blinked at me, and the corners of his little aggrieved mouth gradually lifted as he giggled. A look of shock crossed the man's face. I took off the sock on the other foot as well and turned it inside out to show him. There are tiny threads inside these socks, and they're the same color as the fabric, so we can't see them. A baby's skin is delicate, and if it gets snagged, it's very uncomfortable, so they need to be worn inside out. The man nodded, but then said, sure enough, the quality of socks that cost 30,000 a pair isn't very good. Next time, let's get the 50,000 pair. Me, you mean this little piece of fabric costs 30,000? Give me all the socks you don't want, I'll sew them together and wear them as a patchwork garment. This fabric would be just right for making socks to hook over the feet, or for me to wear as clothing. I had finally figured out the whole story with the system, but before I even had time to process it, a loud cry rang out again. Qin Jiao held the child awkwardly, looking over at her husband. Gu Jinma was actually at a loss too, but he was naturally calm. After taking the child and checking it over calmly, he looked at me, a bewildered gaze. I distinctly heard that child muttering, so quiet, too quiet. In a flash of inspiration, I immediately started whistling. In fact, it was my own hastily improvised new song, composed and arranged on the spot, though it had nothing whatsoever to do with the tune. Xiaobao gradually quieted down, looking in my direction. She let out a giggle. Qin Jiao's gaze toward me radiated the tenderness of a new mother. Of course, part of the reason was also that this body of mine was only 16, quite young. According to the system, there weren't many in the village who could afford to go to school, and once they grew older, they went out to work. Because I had taken care of my younger brother when I was little and had some experience looking after children, I was passed along through layers of intermediaries. The Gu family's originally high-paid nanny had taken a month's leave for personal matters, and somehow, for no apparent reason, I was brought in to fill the position. Originally, after learning my age, the Gu family didn't want me. They didn't want child labor, but the intermediary couldn't bear to give up such a big client, so they praised me to the skies, and in the end I was called over for a private trial. Obviously, I passed the trial, and the couple were 120% satisfied. I took the job of making 150,000 yuan a month with tears in my eyes, doing extremely simple translation work, serving a little master who was such a lovely child that it made your heart melt. My daily work was basically this. When he said he wanted milk, I made it for him. When he said he needed to poop, I changed his diaper. When he said he was bored, I hummed songs for him, not the least bit hard, not the least bit tiring. To outsiders, it just looked like I stayed by the little young master's side every day, and whenever he cried, I could pinpoint the reason within 5 seconds, making him giggle with laughter. The butler said, "Young master is picky about the nipple and the temperature every time he drinks milk. You have to find the nipple he likes and warm it to the right temperature before he'll drink it." I looked at the little baby in front of me, who would happily drink from any nipple as long as it wasn't too hot or too cold, and listened to his babbling. Oh, so it wasn't that he was picky about the nipple or the temperature, it was that every time he cried, they assumed he was hungry. Actually, he wasn't hungry. They changed his pacifier and adjusted the temperature for him, fussing and messing around until he got hungry, and only then did he magnanimously open his mouth to drink his milk. Clearly, he's such an easy baby to take care of, with such a good temper and so well behaved. Who's ruining his reputation? That day, the beautiful, kind, and gentle Mrs. Chin gave me a day off and let me go out to have fun. I had a month's salary, 150,000 renminbi, in my pocket, and I went on a shopping spree in the mall while crying tears of happiness. If learning baby talk could let me keep living like this forever, I'd be willing to keep learning it until the day I die. I wasn't happy for long before something even happier happened. Qin Jiao called me and apologetically told me that the child had been crying non-stop and nothing they did could soothe him, asking if I could come back first to take a look. Her tone was at a loss, tinged with shyness. I immediately went back. Gu Xiaobao was quite cooperative. On seeing me for the second, he stopped crying, then, pitifully, "Want a hug? So adorable. I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying." So adorable in the whole world. But I keenly sensed that beneath Miss Chin's relief was a hint of loneliness. As someone who has read web novels on tomato novel for over 10 years, I immediately thought of great merit overshadowing the ruler. After caring for the crown prince for 10 years, the emperor said I was the crown prince's weakness and thus granted me death, and I've been reborn back to the first year of caring for the crown prince. I jolted awake and immediately said to Xiaobao, "Sweetie, did a dream scare you? Just give mommy a hug, and you'll be fine." I pulled the child into Miss Chin's arms. Gu Xiaobao was much easier to deal with than his father, who looked so human on the outside but was actually deathly good at putting on an act. He looked at Miss Chin and giggled. "Madam, hold him more often when you're usually around him, and he'll grow attached to you." I said, "Thank you." She smiled, knowing what I had discovered, a little mist glistening in her eyes. "Sorry, I've just been too busy with work lately." Miss Chin is so beautiful even crying. She's this beautiful. Mr. Gu, come here. What right do you have to have both the beautiful, gentle, understanding Miss Chin and the fair, cute, obedient little darling with big Karazang eyes, plump cheeks, and a touch that makes her giggle? Look in my eyes, tell me why." Although I feel quite embarrassed about taking the original nanny's job, the battle for the heir has always been like this. Winners are kings, losers are bandits. Either you lose your job or I lose mine. Through my tireless efforts, Gu Xiaobao's relationship with his mother improved a lot, and whenever he saw her, he wanted her to hold him. Mr. Gu is not within the scope of my efforts. To me, this person seems a bit pretentiously aloof, so let him keep putting on airs, because he seems to have some intention of humbling himself and lowering his status. Maybe it was because I was blind, or maybe he was too busy to have time to mend the father-son relationship, but what does that have to do with me? I'm not going to be a jerk and sow discord between them. I'm just not helping when Mr. Gu comes. My reputation really took off at a private gathering of wealthy ladies, because I am genuinely adorable, beautiful, likable, and quirky. Miss Chin likes me very much, and little Bao Gu also likes me. Therefore, Miss Chin treats me as half a sister, and whenever possible, she takes me along. Except for work-related or formal occasions, this circle of wealthy ladies consists of new mothers who have just given birth. They rarely have time to relax without work, and their discussions revolve around parenting issues. "Oh, Miss Zhao, "Don't you hire a nanny for your child?" one of the ladies asked. I was amusing little Bao Gu, who could barely sit up but still wobbled from side to side, as well as another well-behaved baby who could crawl. I wasn't sure whose child it was. Upon hearing this, I glanced at that Miss Zhao. She dressed in a gentle, ladylike way, and looked like she had a good temper, just like Miss Qin. Nana won't let go of anyone, and she can't let go either. You're just too soft-hearted. Being this clingy isn't very good, it's even delaying her career. One madam said this, but still didn't step in to interfere. Finding a childcare specialist isn't easy these days either. Do you know why Mrs. Zhang from the Zhang family isn't here? The childcare specialist they hired was an old one, supposedly some high-level childcare specialist. She was watching the child at home, and with such a big bed, she didn't even notice when the child fell to the floor. Look, the child twisted her hand and cried for half a day, and she still didn't notice. She even tried to hide it and didn't dare say anything. It wasn't until it had swollen up so badly that they called in a private doctor. Now they're suing. Being young doesn't necessarily mean it's okay either. The childcare nanny at my aunt's place, when we hired her, it was because she looked honest and spoke sweetly, and she seemed to be good with children too, plus she was young and energetic. But what happened? She got involved with the husband. After being driven away, who knows how, she ended up pregnant, and secretly gave birth to the child. Turns out it was a boy. My aunt's daughter wasn't even favored by her mother-in-law anymore, and she fought with her husband like crazy. Even talking about divorce, that woman was so disgraceful. I saw her once when I went to visit my niece. She really did look pitiful and innocent. Who would have thought she was used to sleeping her way into bed? So that's why it's hard to find a childcare nanny. If they're too old, they don't have the energy. If they're too young, you can't trust them. As the lady spoke, her gaze drifted toward me intentionally or not. If you want to name names, just say it directly. I may not have much culture, but I can understand your sarcasm and innuendo. Although Miss Qin was gentle, she was not a weak person. She immediately said, "There's no need to condemn everyone with one sweeping blow. Looking good doesn't necessarily mean someone would do something like this. And you can't blame the girl entirely either. These things happen only when both sides are willing." The man himself couldn't keep his lower half under control. If he were really a decent man, then the moment some other woman took off her clothes, he'd be calling the police to arrest a pervert. Her words were rather blunt, and the lady said awkwardly, "I was just speaking from the heart." Wah! Just as they were talking, the child in Miss Zhao's arms suddenly burst into loud tears. That's when the ladies realized that at previous gatherings, the children's crying had been like background music. So why was it so quiet this time? Turning around, they saw that every child there, from those who could only sit to those who could crawl and walk, had gathered around me, giggling and babbling with me. "Hey, this nanny at Miss Qin's place is really something. No wonder you take her with you everywhere you go with Tang Tang. The kids all love playing with her so much." Tang Tang was Gu Xiaobao's nickname. His full name was Gu Mingtang. "Isn't that so? My girl is especially stubborn and pampered too. If anything goes even a little wrong, she starts crying and throwing a fit. Even the 3 nannies at home can't control her. But now she's playing with that nanny, quiet and well-behaved. It really is strange. I had one child in my arms, another clinging to my back, and 2 more holding onto my legs. I was just wrapped up in their milky scent and soft little bodies. On my left was a fair, tender little face. On my right was a little face with long lashes and big, round eyes. By my legs was a plump, squishy little bottom trying hard to press closer to me. Was this heaven? There was no need to say much about the genes of domineering CEOs and wealthy madams. Their children were all adorable, each and every one of them. Cute things should rule the world. Hearing the little cutie in Miss Zhao's arms fussing and wanting something to play with, Miss Zhao was still busy feeding and changing diapers. I held my little Gu Bao and let him lend his toy to this little brother to play with. Under my embrace, Gu Bao generously leaned downward, stretched out his chubby little paw, and handed the singing toy rabbit in his hand, worth 50,000, to little Bao. The little darling took the toy and stopped crying or being upset. He grinned at the 2 of us. In Miss Zhao's eyes, I was a living bodhisattva, a modern-day Huatua. "It's just bored, not hungry or needing a diaper change," I said with a smile, taking no blame for it. "Madam, your precious daughter isn't shy at all. What a lovely child." Mothers all like hearing others praise their children, and the CEO's wife was no exception. She immediately smiled so widely that her teeth showed. "Hey, girl, how come These babies are so well behaved when they're with you. Any magic tricks you can share? I looked at Miss Chin, and she nodded with a smile. I'm curious too. I was holding Gu Xiaobao in one arm, while my other hand was being held by Miss Zhao's child, who was playing with it. No magic tricks, really. Maybe I'm just naturally likable to kids, I said, making it up on the spot with a chuckle. Children have the least ulterior motives. If you're good to them and always spend time with them, they'll like you. That is indeed true. Oh dear, then I really have no choice. The anxious, flustered matron looked troubled for a moment, then came up with a new idea. Xiao, how about I borrow your girl for a few days? I'll pay her wages as usual. Mine has never been this obedient. Miss Chin hesitated a little and let out a soft Seeing that, I smiled and said, you flatter me, madam. I've monopolized the childcare work at Miss Chin's home, so Tang Tang can't do without me now. Just then, Tang Tang suddenly hugged my face and kissed me on the cheek. Don't go, I heard him cry pitifully. I don't want to keep forcing myself to eat when I'm not hungry every day, or forcing myself to poop when I don't have to. Me, young master, your wording is a bit too crude. Don't say I taught you that. Oh, what a pity. Under the control of me, this little treasure's chief steward, everything was in perfect order, and not a single child present cried for more than 10 seconds. No wife has ever been this worry-free. Everyone wants to poach me. A good nanny isn't something you share with outsiders, a good childcare specialist either. By the time things were wrapping up, my pants were covered all the way around with little handprints. The noble ladies carried one away, and the one left behind cried, her sobs heart-wrenching and earth-shaking, so pitiful that everyone was left at a loss. I had a solution helplessly. I held them one by one in my arms and coaxed them. Good baby, I'll play with you tomorrow. Okay, don't cry, don't cry. They stopped crying. Good girl, yeah, big sister will come see you tomorrow. Okay, don't cry anymore. Go home with mom. Another one comforted. Little Gugu, don't cry, be good. You'll meet big sister tomorrow. Got a smile just like that. After hugging everyone in a circle, the scene fell silent. My arms could no longer bear the strain. They were so sore I couldn't even lift them after we went back. Miss Chin didn't say much and just told me to rest well. As for what Sui Chang was thinking, at 6 o'clock, the one who was called first, before Gu Xiaobao, was Miss Chin's phone. She came to the nursery in her pajamas holding her phone and woke me up. Xiaomei, Sister Zhang's child is crying and asking for you. No one else can console them. Still drowsy, I thought to myself, how come there's even an out-of-town assignment in the video? The only child in Miss Zhang's family who had been able to speak yesterday was crying uncontrollably, saying over and over, I want my big sister, I want my big sister. Do I really have such deep feelings for him? It's already to the point where you can't do without me, huh? Just as I finished tidying up and was getting ready to go to Miss Zhang's place, Miss Chin's phone rang again. Another family called, saying they wanted me to go take a look at the child. I stood numbly at the doorway, watching Miss Chin answer several phone calls. Then she spread her hands helplessly. You don't need to go out. They're bringing the child here. Strangely enough, not long after seeing me, the child stopped crying. It was as if I had poisoned them, and I was the living antidote. Good heavens. When Mr. Gu got up, he stared blankly for a long time at the grand scene in the living room. Miss Chin pulled him over and explained everything to him once, and only then did he give me a half-understanding look. As if I were some human cat treat, I lay numbly sprawled on the sofa, drowsy and half asleep, with children all over me. In the evening, the ladies each transferred me some money. Seeing Miss Chin's glance, I didn't dare accept it, and only said that I liked playing with children too. How could I possibly take money for having fun? It was the same routine as yesterday, and the children were sent away. Seeing that I looked like a body drained of all its vitality, Miss Chin took pity on me, gave me a day off, and promised that she absolutely, definitely wouldn't call me back today. Half believing her, I returned to my rented room. Since I had only worked for half a year and had only 2 days off in January, plus one time when I was suddenly called back because the child was crying, my rented place was cleaner than anything else, like a model apartment, and was only used for sleeping, and I'd only slept there for a little over 10 days. That day was calm and peaceful, and I slept wonderfully. When I returned to the Gu family, I found the living room once again turned into a wild party for the babies. The crying rising and falling all around me made me feel desperate. System, get out here. At the roar of a shrew, the system came running out, explaining to me that due to a numerical analysis error, all my talent points had been put into attracting children. As a result, to babies, I am like catnip to cats, bamboo to pandas, and bones to dogs, so, as long as I've seen a child, they'll be drawn to me until they become enlightened. What kind of nonsense is that? Shocking, the baby magnet is. At it again, coaxing kids, starting off with max-level baby talk. I've got countless overbearing CEOs by the throat. These all-powerful, domineering capitalist tycoons aren't going to send me to an institute to be dissected and studied so they can get a miracle drug, then manufacture it and launch a once-in-a-millennium divine medicine, the baby-controlling miracle drug, and get rich off it, are they? I sat in the community, thinking helplessly. This community was built within a month. Even the formaldehyde inside had been cleared out. It was funded through a crowdfunding effort by the domineering tycoons, made specifically for me, to help me raise the child. Calling it a parenting class sounds nice, and just like that, I ended up opening a parenting class in the overbearing CEO circle. The soft carpet covered every place one could step on, and I always felt like if I fell, I'd bounce right off it, to let me devote myself fully to taking care of the children. My food, clothing, housing, and transportation were all taken care of perfectly. I took care of the children, and someone was assigned to take care of me. I don't need to worry about any of the children's expenses, just tell the designated person, and someone will take care of the purchases. On top of that, each person and each family will get an extra 100,000 yuan a month from me. I'm making over $1 million a month with tears in my eyes, rich but unable to go out and have fun, but the kids need to go out and have fun. They're rich dads and rich moms. Whenever they go out, make it like a group company outing. They even rent an entire island. I told each of my kids to keep quiet and behave themselves for 2 days, and then, still in tears, I got to ride along on the private jet, stay on the private island, and sleep in the private hotel. Just like that, eating, drinking, and having fun. Every single one of them was about to start school. Although they weren't as clingy as before, the domineering CEOs found it too troublesome, so they hired private tutors for every subject to come to the house. They simply set up a kindergarten right there in the community. They had their own connections and influence, which got me appointed as the kindergarten principal. During that time, more and more domineering CEOs heard of my reputation and sent their children over to be disciplined, thereby bringing the Gu family plenty of benefits. I became a lucky cat. Life here is busy yet easy. They've started elementary school and all left this place. I stayed on at the kindergarten, every now and then, new children came in, and old little treasures were sent off. Fortunately, they didn't forget me. Every few days, they would come back with their certificates and homework notebooks and gather in the early education class to do their writing together. And this became an after-school care class again, with tutors coming to the house for lessons. Parents are also happy to have some leisure time. Then they grew up and became more intelligent. The most notable one is Gu Mingtang, who has been with me the longest. This child was well-behaved and adorable when he was young, but as he grew older, he became more and more like his father, serious and mature, acting like an adult from a young age. He had already forgotten the events of the past, forgotten how he used to clutch at the hem of my clothes and call me, "Sister, don't go." It seemed he had really started treating me like his sister. Nonsense. I'm in the same generation as his mother, so, with Qin Jiao's mediation, he successfully changed how he addressed me and started calling me aunt. I've been with the Gu family for 7 or 8 years now, and I've always treated it as my own home. No matter how lively the early education classes, kindergarten, and after-school care program are, I've always prioritized Gu Xiaobao. Over the years, I've gradually grown to find President Gu, with his annoyingly pretentious CEO act, much more pleasing to the eye. Maybe it's because his wife really treats me like a younger sister. In recent years, during the holidays, when they bring gifts for his wife and child, they even remember to bring one for me. I'm truly grateful to him. I've taught these children very well. One by one, they know how to show gratitude and behave with proper manners. All year round, from Spring Festival and Women's Day to my birthday, Teacher's Day, and all sorts of niche days, people would come to me carrying gifts, either ones they made themselves or bought. I was only 24, sitting on a 9-figure fortune, with the heirs of various families in the capital all behind me. My biggest worry every day was what to eat for lunch, what to eat for dinner, and what to eat for a late-night snack, and so I lay there like a salted fish, just coasting through life until I was 28. When Gu Mingtang started middle school, this child inherited his mother's gentleness and his dad's chatter, and so he became a worrywart of a homemaker. but he only worried about me, not anyone else. Auntie, stop lying around at home like that and go find yourself a husband. I tapped his forehead. Now you're trying to tell me what to do. Gu Mingtang held his head, his gaze still firm and earnest. Dad said a life without goals is like a long voyage without a direction. I cut him off without changing expression. My goal is to get rich, he frowned. But if you don't go to work every day, how are you supposed to get rich? Me, the interest I earn in a day isn't higher than my salary from work. He shook his head, as if trying to shake my twisted logic out of his mind. You've led me astray again. I'm not telling you to go to work to make money, just that you should have some goal, otherwise, you'll get too listless. Gu Mingtang said solemnly, you should go find a husband. The teacher said that once a person has a partner, they won't be so bored. Me, are you dying for me to get married? Gu Mingtang immediately shook his head. No, auntie, at the very least you should marry into a family as the husband. What kind of person would be qualified to marry you? I reasoned with him. Do you know how much it costs now to bring a man home as a live-in husband? Even the daughter of a provincial governor has to prepare 20 million to marry a man in. Because what a woman loses is only 20 million, but what a man loses is his dignity. Gu Mingtang was stunned as he mentally calculated his little treasure stash. What kind of man is so expensive? Men who are 170 and 160. I sighed. Gu Mingtang said thoughtfully, if Dad didn't have money, would he also not be able to marry Mom? I spread my hands. Because your mom loves your dad, so she doesn't need that much money. He nodded. So Dad has to be very, very good to Mom. So you have to be a little nicer to your future wife, or else no girl will be willing to have your. My mouth was covered by Gu Mingtang's hand, and his serious little face was a little red. Auntie, I'm a kid. I looked at him and smiled, but I understand now. When Gu Mingtang held his coming-of-age ceremony at 18, he made a special point of inviting me. I witnessed him grow from a child who had to be picky even about the nipple on his bottle into the capable man he is now, someone who can hold up half the sky. He has a gentle temperament and doesn't keep people at arm's length, because I said that I see people make others feel hard to get along with, which isn't conducive to making connections, but he deliberately keeps his words to a minimum and speaks sparingly, because I said that saying too much leads to mistakes, which is not conducive to the future. I've spent more than 10 years reading domineering CEO novels, and all the knowledge I picked up from them ended up being put to use on him. I really did raise a domineering CEO. He began getting involved in company affairs, and some of the people he worked with were children who had once been in my early education class with him back then. They would occasionally come to see me. After all, their feelings for me were nowhere near as deep as Gu Mingtang's. They'd ask what I needed and then send someone to deliver it. When I was 35, I had some free time and opened a flower shop. It was quiet work, and looking at flowers made people feel good. I paid for the shop myself, while Gu Mingtang helped me with everything from choosing the location to sourcing the flowers. Whenever the children's families needed any kind of flowers for something, they would come to me, and they even introduced people to help me bring in customers. A competitor came to my shop to cause trouble one day, and the very next day that competitor was replaced, shop and all, along with the person themselves. The merchants next door looked at me as if I were the king of hell. I blinked innocently. Why were they looking at me? It wasn't like I did it. I didn't have that kind of ability. I was just a child-rearing specialist. If they had any issues, they should talk to my children. The cooperation I want, even if it doesn't work out the first time. I won't be afraid of being laughed at by Yin Xiaohuan. Not a typo. It'll definitely be negotiated the second time. Everyone on the commercial street says that the owner of that flower shop has unbelievably good business luck. Only I know this is because I've raised enough children, and every single one of them has turned out promising. Anyone I brought up was never a wastrel. The worst among them kept a few young actors as sugar babies, and even kept the whole thing hidden from me so tightly that he didn't dare let me find out. It was Gu Mingtang who seriously leaked the secret. A girl who likes Xiao Qin came to my place to buy flowers. I don't know what didn't suit her, but she immediately knocked over a flower stand. I've taught dozens of children myself, so I have plenty of patience and a good temper. Miss, this flower stand, including the pots and seedlings, costs nearly 50,000 yuan. I kindly reminded her. The woman glared at me fiercely. Dare to make me pay? Do you know who owns this street? I nodded. The Qin families. This branch was opened here only after Xiao Qin repeatedly urged me to do so. I'm Mr. Qin's girlfriend. With just one word, I can shut your shop down. I shrugged and let her leave after she had smashed a few things. The next day, she was personally escorted over by Xiao Qin, apologized to my aunt. Xiao Qin said coldly to her, Hey, Xiao Qin, haven't I taught you before, don't be so rough with girls. I stepped forward with a smile. But I didn't look at the woman on the ground either, just straightened his slightly messy tie. You look a bit haggard, tired from work. Don't worry about me. The woman looked up in alarm, seemingly because of how we addressed each other. No matter if it's Manager Chin, Manager Gu, Manager Fu, or Manager Shin, in front of me, they're all just Xiao Qin, Xiao Gu, Xiao Fu, and Xiao Shin. After mastering baby talk, I became the little aunt of the wealthy tycoons. The woman was driven out by Xiao Qin. Leaving the two of us facing each other, Xiao Qin suddenly sighed. I'm really sorry, Auntie, I didn't know she would cause trouble here. I smiled and patted his back. It's not your fault, you've always liked to silently take the blame since you were little. I may seem not to blame, but in reality, I am reminding Xiao Qin that he was brought up by me. When he was falsely accused, I was the one who stepped in to uphold justice, only I, who move among all the families yet do not fully belong to any, can truly mediate fairly. If any two families need reconciliation or peace, it must go through me first. Although I have no official status or position, no one should dare to lay a hand on me, if there was even the slightest offense. The remaining 80-odd heirs would seize on it as if they had caught him in the act and tear into him viciously. My flower shop was nothing serious. With so many children, if you helped out a bit and I provided some sponsorship, then with top-tier brands and companies cooperating with me, within 2 years it had reached a height that an ordinary flower shop could hardly aspire to. So, in my 40s, I finally stopped coasting and began to move among the social and business elite. At a high-end banquet, I was invited, knowing full well I was just there to make up the numbers, and I very honestly ate dessert in a corner. At this point, I was old, but my looks had not faded. After all, I had nothing to worry about, and there was no need for me to compete for attention with a bunch of young girls. Instead, I attracted some of the new generation of wealthy ladies. Many people knew that my company had ridden the wave of the times and, through some inexplicable favor from various firms, had been chosen and recognized before achieving what it has today. But most people did not know about the relationship between me and the children. These wealthy ladies were the enforcers sent by my husband. Everyone spoke to me in a rather unpolite way. It was the kids who helped me get the situation back under control. Zoyuyu is a child whose abilities are no less than a man's, handling herself with ease among a crowd of grown men and exuding a very strong presence. Seeing me surrounded by a bunch of women, she immediately came over with a wine glass in hand. Auntie, I finally found you. She came up affectionately and linked her arm with mine. Xiao Yaye had been the fiercest one since childhood when it came to fighting for favor. She had plenty of strength and plenty of tricks. What are you all crowding around my aunt for, rushing to offer her a collaboration? She said with a smile. Mrs. Jiang, wasn't your family's villa over in the east of the city just recently built? You'll need vegetation and flowers for the landscaping, right? I came empty-handed, ate my fill of desserts, and went back with a big contract in hand. Wrong. Actually, I'm still just a salted fish, with the kids having their way with me either way. I'm not the one who'll come out losing. At the time, the child from Miss Zhang's family was the oldest. The oldest among all the children I had brought out, and had already reached the age of choosing a wife. His family had chosen a fiancée for him, and he brought her over for me to meet. This is my aunt, he said to his fiancée. She was a bright and cheerful woman, and she immediately asked curiously, Aunt, when we were little, she was the one who raised me, and Xiao Shin, Xiao Gu, Xiao Fu, and the others too, we were very attached to her back then. The woman almost instantly thought of the rumors about me, and her attitude immediately became much more respectful. Hello, Auntie, if this were in ancient times, I'd be the wet nurse of the legitimate eldest son of 60% of the imperial relatives and nobles in the capital, as well as officials of the 4th rank and above. Even if I couldn't be granted a first-rank noble title, I'd still have the support of half the powerful families in the capital behind me. After that, the children came one by one, bringing their fiancés and fiancées for me to meet. I remembered 80 or so children and their partners, and actually a small portion of them overlapped. The most hopeless thing was that the first couple to have a child excitedly asked me to come take a look. At that glance, their child latched onto me. Me, please call me the ancient Greek god in charge of children. Since others are not at ease, I simply put the company aside. After all, I don't need to negotiate contracts, so I start taking care of the children's children. Who would have thought that parenting experts also have a hereditary system? As expected, I will once again open an early education class for the new generation of domineering CEOs. Then, I will be clung to by this new generation of children until they come of age. Since I knew I had been fished into this world by the system, I didn't dare develop too many feelings in it, so I remained unmarried and childless all my life. In their eyes, I had spent my entire life working hard for them, and I didn't even have children of my own. So when I died, the funeral procession was enormous, with luxury cars streaming in, second only to the old board members of those long-established families. In the paparazzi's footage, faces crowded together, all familiar names from financial news. The CEOs and chairmen came en masse. I was the bond between them, bringing the heirs of those families together from a young age. As they grew up, they gained another circle of connections. So many of the power holders in this generation knew one another, and no one dared to play any dirty tricks, because when I was young, I firmly believed that tycoons had to develop morally, intellectually, physically, aesthetically, and spiritually in all aspects, otherwise no heroine would fall for them, so I kept a very tight rein on them. Maybe that left me with some lingering shadows. When I grew up, the system gathered up my soul and asked me to rate it, because it wanted KPI. It did not give me the English language talent I had asked for, but instead gently and steadily sent me through this life into a group of the cleanest, most sincere, and most grateful souls. After hearing this story, what do you think? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Now let's begin a new story. I'm an award-winning postpartum doula, because I feel sorry for how hard it is on new moms. I use praise-based methods to train dads to actively help take care of the baby, but the new mom thought I was engaging in female rivalry, trying to put her down in front of her husband, and had ulterior motives. While I was teaching her husband how to change diapers, she angrily stabbed me several times. You're just a maternity nurse. What right do you have to bully me and steal my husband and baby? When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day I first came to Zhu Jing's home to work as a maternity nurse. I will never forget the feeling of that knife plunging into my abdomen, the icy metal cut through flesh, and the searing pain shot through my entire body like an electric current. In an instant, I lowered my head and saw Zhu Jing's hands, adorned with carefully painted nails, gripping a fruit knife as she stabbed it into my body once, twice, and 3 times. You're nothing more than a maternity nurse. What right do you have to bully me and steal my husband and baby? Zhu Jing's hysterical voice exploded in my ear. I wanted to defend myself, but blood had already surged up into my throat. I collapsed onto the expensive marble floor in Zhu Jing's home, my vision gradually blurring. What I saw in that final moment was Zhu Jing's twisted face, and the baby stroller behind her, frozen in terror. I, a gold medal postpartum nanny, was killed by my client's wife for teaching her husband how to change a diaper. What an absurd and tragic ending. Before consciousness faded, I was filled with grievance. I only felt sorry for that first-time mother who was nursing day and night, and wanted to use praise to encourage her husband to take a more active role in childcare. Mrs. Zhou, this is our home. We'll be troubling you for the next month. The familiar voice pulled me back to reality. I suddenly looked up and saw Zhu Jing's delicately made-up face, wearing a fake, enthusiastic smile at me. I looked around. This was the entryway of Zhu Jing's home. Their wedding photo hung on the wall, and next to the shoe cabinet was that imported baby stroller I remembered so well. Everything was exactly the same as when I first came to her house. I was reborn. I had returned to the day when all the tragedies began. Mrs. Zhou, are you okay? Zhu Jing waved her hand in front of my eyes, a trace of impatience flashing in her expression. I quickly adjusted my expression and forced a professional smile. I'm fine, Mrs. Zhou. I just spaced out for a moment. Zhu Jing led me into the house, introducing the situation at home. As we walked, I nodded mechanically, but inside I was already in turmoil. I had really returned to the past. The memories of my last life were horrifyingly vivid, and the wrongs, grievances, and pain were all still fresh in my mind. Our baby is now 2 months old and always cries and fusses at night. My husband is busy with work, so he can't help much, Zhu Jing said, her eyes slightly red, looking pitiful and delicate. In my past life, I was moved by the way she acted like this and took the initiative to take on more work, even patiently teaching her husband, Lin Feng, all sorts of parenting skills. I felt sorry for her weakness after childbirth and tried every possible way to lighten her burden, even sacrificing my own rest time, and what was the result? I was repaid with suspicion and a butcher's knife. I understand. I nodded calmly, no longer responding with the same enthusiasm as in my past life. I will provide professional services in accordance with the contract. Zhu Jing seemed to freeze for a moment, perhaps because my cold attitude was not what she had expected, but she quickly adjusted her expression and took me to the nursery. Seeing the sleeping little life in the crib, my heart still softened for a moment. In my previous life, I truly loved this child and treated him as my own, but now, I remind myself to keep my distance. My job includes newborn care, basic postpartum care, and simple housework, I said, looking straight into Zhu Jing's eyes, my tone calm but firm. Any additional services need to be negotiated separately. A hint of displeasure flashed in Zhu Jing's eyes, but she quickly covered it up. Of course. Sister Zhou is a professional, will do things by the book. Just then, the doorbell rang. Zhu Jing went to open the door, and I heard a familiar male voice. It was Lin Feng, her husband. Hubby, you're back. Sister Zhou is already here. Zhu Jing's voice instantly turned 8 notches sweeter. I stood still where I was until Lin Feng walked into the nursery. He looked just as he did in my memory, a refined, gentle middle-aged man, with tired dark circles under his eyes. Mrs. Zhou, right. I've long admired your name. My colleague's family was cared for by you, and they couldn't stop singing your praises. Lin Feng stretched out his hand. I didn't shake his hand as enthusiastically as I had in my previous life. I only politely touched his fingertips. Hello, Mr. Lin, I'll do my part well. I keenly noticed Zhu Jing's eyes quickly flicking between us, the corners of her mouth pulling down slightly. In that moment, I suddenly understood, her hostility toward me had existed from the very beginning. In my past life, I was far too eager to help, mistakenly believing that sincere effort would be rewarded with gratitude. I never realized that in Zhu Jing's eyes, my professional ability and normal interactions with her husband had become threats. This time, I would not make the same mistake again. Mrs. Zhu, I need to confirm your specific needs and schedule. I took out my notebook and deliberately kept my distance from Lin Feng. For example, the baby's feeding schedule, your dietary restrictions, and so on. Zhu Jing's expression relaxed a little, and she began explaining them one by one. I took careful notes and didn't say a single unnecessary word. When Lin Feng tried to join the discussion and asked how to soothe the baby to sleep, I calmly replied, your wife has already mastered these basic questions very well. You can ask her. A flash of surprise crossed Zhu Jing's eyes, followed immediately by a trace of smugness. I knew it. This move was the right one. Night fell, and I was alone in the guest room, tidying my things. I in the mirror looked much younger than in my memory, but my eyes were different now, not the once passionate gold medal postpartum nanny, but a reborn person who had learned to protect herself. This time, I'll only do what's expected of me and watch coldly as Zhu Jing handles childrearing without my wholehearted support. I gently stroked my abdomen, where there was still no stab wound, but the memory of the pain had sunk deep into my bones. Zhu Jing, in this life, I want to see how you reap what you sow. At 5 in the morning, a faint whimper came through the baby monitor. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling for 3 seconds, confirming that I had really been reborn. Outside the window, the sky was just beginning to brighten, and the sound of a baby crying was growing louder. According to the contract, my working hours were from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., but in my previous life, I always voluntarily got up early and went to bed late, just so Zhu Jing could rest a little longer. Now, I rolled over and pressed my pillow into a more comfortable position. The baby's crying grew louder and louder, piercing through the walls. I heard the door to the master bedroom next door suddenly flung open, and slippers pattered toward the nursery. Don't cry, baby, mommy's here. Zhu Jing's voice was thick with sleep and panic. The crying showed no sign of stopping. I glanced at my phone. 5:20. Based on my experience from my last life, the child was hungry and had a wet diaper. Zhu Jing should check the diaper first, then feed him, but she was always flustered and got the order wrong. Sure enough, the sound of a bottle clattering came from the nursery, followed by Zhu Jing's frustrated curse. Damn it, she must have prepared the milk first, only to realize afterward that the diaper needed changing. Now she either had to put down the bottle and change the diaper, which would make the child cry even harder, or feed the baby first, but the wet Diaper would make the baby uncomfortable. I closed my eyes and counted my breaths. In my previous life, I would have gotten up right away to help, gently guiding Zhu Jing while efficiently handling everything myself, but today, I simply lay there in silence, listening to the chaos continue in the next room. At 6:45, I got up on time and washed up. At 7 o'clock sharp, I showed up in the kitchen fully dressed and started preparing breakfast for the new mother, when Zhu Jing came into the kitchen. Holding the baby and swaying slightly, I almost didn't recognize her. Her hair was a mess, her eye bags were swollen, and there was still a little formula stain at the corner of her mouth. Just one night, and she was already looking utterly worn out. Miss Joe, her voice was hoarse, the baby cried 4 times last night, and I hardly slept. I handed her a cup of warm water. Postpartum rest is very important, no extra advice, no volunteering to take the night shift. Zhu Jing looked at me, a trace of anticipation flashing in her eyes, as if waiting for me to proactively offer help like the other maternity nurses. I just turned around and started cutting fruit, pretending I didn't understand her hint. Do you work night shifts? She finally couldn't help asking. I can pay extra, that isn't included in the contract. I put the oats into the pot. If you need nighttime care services, you can contact the company to sign an addendum. Zhu Jing's expression immediately darkened. Forget it. I set breakfast on the table: red date millet porridge, steamed eggs, lightly stir-fried vegetables, and a serving of fruit. Zhu Jing stared at the food and picked at the porridge with a spoon in dissatisfaction. I don't like red dates. Red dates help replenish blood and are beneficial for postpartum recovery, I replied calmly. If you have any specific dietary restrictions, please let me know in advance. Zhu Jing curled her lips and reluctantly began to eat. I went to the nursery to check on the baby. The little one was wide-eyed, playing with the baby Jim. When he saw me come in, he actually broke into a toothless grin. My heart suddenly melted, and memories of all the little moments from the last life I had spent raising him flooded back, but I quickly steeled my heart and simply checked his diaper and temperature as a routine matter, recording the feeding time. Baby fed 90 milliliters at 7:10 a.m., diaper changed. I wrote it in the logbook, without adding the kind of considerate note I used to, like in good spirits. Recommend increasing tummy time. Back in the kitchen, Zhu Jing was on the phone, her voice sweet and cloying. Honey, can you come home earlier tonight? The baby misses you. Seeing me come in, she immediately lowered her voice. That postpartum nanny doesn't seem to talk much. Right, just do as you said. I pretended not to hear and started washing the baby bottles. In my previous life, I would have used this opportunity to explain the baby's condition to Lin Feng and give him scientific parenting advice. Now, I just wanted to stay as far away from this couple as possible. At 10 in the morning, the doorbell rang. Zhu Jing was catching up on sleep, so I had no choice but to answer the door. Oh, so you're the top-notch postpartum nanny Zhu Jing hired, right? Standing outside the door was a woman in her 50s, with a stylish perm and a bag of fruit in her hand. I'm Sisterly from next door. I came to see Zhu Jing and the baby. I nodded politely. Miss Zhu is resting. Please come in. As soon as Sisterly came in, she stared at me and said, my daughter gave birth last month, and the confinement nanny they hired couldn't even change a diaper properly. I heard Zhu Jing hired a gold medal confinement nanny, and it costs 30,000 a month. I didn't respond. I just led her to the living room to sit down, then went to make tea. Zhu Jing, Sisterly is here to see you. I knocked on the master bedroom door. Zhu Jing came out, groggy from sleep, and when she saw Sisterly, she forced a smile. Hello, Sisterly. Oh, look at how exhausted you are, Sisterly exclaimed dramatically. And you still have a gold medal postpartum nanny. My daughter's nanny wasn't that great, but at least my daughter could sleep through the night. Zhu Jing's expression instantly turned ugly. I put down my teacup and tactfully retreated to the nursery. Through the door, I heard Sisterly continue, Mrs. Zhang's family also hired a gold medal postpartum nanny, and the way she looked at you couldn't tell at all. She had just given birth. She made different kinds of postpartum meals every day, and even helped the couple take a lot of baby photo shoots. My heart sank. The Sisterly seemed enthusiastic, but every word she said was really aimed at Zhu Jing's sore spot. In my previous life, I would have stepped in to smooth things over and praised Zhu Jing for being a responsible mother. Today, I just quietly trimmed the baby's nails. Sure enough, after a while Zhu Jing stormed in, scooped up the baby, and said, Sisterly wants to see the baby. I handed over the baby wipes. Do you need me to help straighten the baby's clothes? No need. Zhu Jing almost snatched the wipes away. I'm his mother, you don't need to interfere in these things. After Sisterly left, the atmosphere at home became noticeably tense. Zhu Jing put the baby into the cradle with a bit more force than usual, and the child, startled, began to cry again. So annoying, Zhu Jing growled under her breath, but did not immediately pick the child up. My fingers trembled slightly, and my professional instincts made me want to step forward to comfort the baby, but reason held me back. This was not my child, and Zhu Jing needed to face the responsibilities of motherhood herself. In the end, Zhu Jing still picked up the baby, but her movements were rough, and the child cried even harder. Why not try patting his back gently? I finally couldn't hold back and suggested softly, I know how to comfort a child. Zhu Jing shot me a vicious glare. I don't need you to teach me. In the afternoon, while Zhu Jing was putting the baby down for a nap, I checked my luggage. As expected, there were signs that someone had gone through my things. My skincare products were out of place, and even my underwear had been rummaged through. In my last life, I had also noticed this kind of situation, but I thought it was the cleaning lady who had moved things around. Now that I think about it, it must have been Zhu Jing. I opened my phone and checked whether there were any signs that it had been looked through. Sure enough, the album's recent usage time showed that it was after I went to sleep last night. I let out a cold laugh. Zhu Jing was treating me as her imaginary enemy. At dinner time, Lin Feng came back. As soon as he walked in, he headed straight for the nursery. When he came out, his brows were tightly furrowed. The baby's bottom is a little red. Zhu Jing immediately looked at me, her eyes full of reproach. In my previous life, I would have rushed to explain the cause of diaper rash and how to care for it, but now, I simply said, I used diaper rash cream. Why does she have diaper rash? Lin Feng pressed. Was the diaper not changed in time? I looked at Zhu Jing. You can ask Mrs. Zhu, she's the one mainly taking care of her during the day. Zhu Jing's expression changed abruptly. Sister Zhou, what do you mean by that? I change the diaper very often. I don't mean anything else, I replied calmly. I'm just explaining that when I took over, I had already noticed the diaper rash and had provided basic care. Lin Feng looked at the two of us in confusion, and the atmosphere turned awkward for a moment. In the end, he sighed, forget it, just be more careful next time. After dinner, according to the contract, I could rest, but in my previous life, I would always take the initiative to help with housework and keep the baby company, giving Zhu Jing and her husband time to spend together. Tonight, I went straight back to the guest room, locked the door, and started searching for information on other maternity nanny jobs. Since I've decided to do only what's required of me in this life, I need to make plans for a month from now. With my qualifications, finding a new job wouldn't be difficult. Outside the door, the baby's crying started up again, along with Zhu Jing's impatient soothing voice and Lin Feng's clumsy attempts to help. I put on my headphones and opened a parenting lecture video. This time, I wouldn't cross the line even one step further. At 3:17 a.m., the baby's cries pierced the silence. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling, silently counting to 10. The crying showed no sign of stopping. Instead, it grew more frantic. From experience, this was not just hunger or a wet diaper, but colic. The master bedroom door was shoved open with a bang, and Zhu Jing stumbled toward the nursery, the slap of her slippers carrying a note of impatience. What now? I just fed you. Zhu Jing's voice was hoarse and rough. I rolled over and pressed a pillow over my head. In my previous life, I would have gotten up at once, used professional techniques to help the baby pass gas, applied a warm towel to the baby's belly, and then explained to Zhu Jing the causes of colic and how to relieve it. But this time, I simply closed my eyes and listened to the chaos next door continue. The crying grew sharper and sharper, like a dull knife sawing at my nerves. Then came Lin Feng's muffled complaints and Zhu Jing's hysterical retorts. Finally, there was a deafening crash, as if a toy had been brutally thrown to the floor. I can't take it anymore. Zhu Jing's scream even drowned out the child's crying. I took a deep breath and glanced at my phone. 3:46 a.m. According to the contract, my working hours were supposed to start at 7:00 a.m., but my professional instinct, and the poor child's crying, ultimately defeated my resolve. I put on my coat and knocked on the nursery door. Do you need help? My voice was calm, without the slightest ripple. The door was yanked open all of a sudden, and Zhu Jing's messy hair and bloodshot eyes made her look like a female ghost in the dim light. The baby in her arms was crying until his face was red, little fists flailing wildly in the air. He's been crying the whole time. He won't drink milk. We even changed his diaper. Zhu Jing's voice trembled with breakdown. Completely unlike her daytime arrogance, I reached out and felt the baby's belly. It was as hard as a little drum. Colic, I said briefly, taking the child and laying him flat on the changing table. Do you have olive oil? Lin Feng immediately nodded and ran to the kitchen. I gently massaged the baby's belly in clockwise circles. The little one's crying weakened a little, turning into intermittent sobbing. The olive oil arrived. I warmed my hands, poured on some oil, and began a professional gas relief massage. In less than 5 minutes, after a string of farts, the baby suddenly fell quiet and looked at me with teary, misty eyes. Okay, it's better, Zhu Jing asked in disbelief. It's been temporarily relieved. I didn't explain further, just handed the baby back to her. I suggest you go buy some anti-colic bottles and probiotics tomorrow. I didn't say that these things should have been prepared long ago. In my previous life, on my very first day at work, I checked their baby supplies list and replenished quite a few necessities. In this life, I deliberately ignored these extra matters. Lin Feng looked at me gratefully. Sister Zhou, thank you so much. Could you teach us how to do the massage, in case tonight it happens again? Mom may prefer to learn these things herself. I interrupted him, glancing meaningfully at Zhu Jing. After all, mother and child are connected by heart. The baby will adapt better to mom's own technique. Zhu Jing's expression instantly stiffened. I knew she hated any situation that made her seem incompetent, especially in front of her husband. Right. Jing, come learn. Lin Feng, oblivious, pushed Zhu Jing forward. Zhu Jing bit her lip and reluctantly reached out. I simply demonstrated a few moves, without patiently correcting the force and angle of her movements like I had in my previous life. When she pressed too hard and made the baby cry again, I simply stepped back. That's about it, just practice more. I glanced at the clock. It's already 4:20. I'm going back to rest. I'll start work at 7 sharp tomorrow, leaving behind the stunned couple and the baby who had started crying again. I left the room without looking back. By the next morning at breakfast, the atmosphere was noticeably even more tense. Zhu Jing had heavy dark circles under her eyes. Mechanically chewing the red date congee I had prepared, Lin Feng kept checking his watch, clearly looking for an excuse to leave home early. There's an early meeting at the company today. He finished his soy milk in 3 gulps and grabbed his briefcase. Zhu Jing suddenly looked up. You said last night that you could go in later today. It was arranged at short notice. There was no way around it. Lin Feng kissed her on the forehead in a hurry. With Sister Zhou there won't be any problem. I sneered inwardly. In my previous life, I would have offered to help, so that Lin Feng could work with peace of mind and Zhu Jing could rest more. Now, I just silently cleared away the bowls and chopsticks. When Lin Feng was about to leave, he hesitated for a moment, then turned to me. Sister Zhou, could you write down the steps for that massage technique for me? I'd like to learn it. Zhu Jing's spoon clattered against the bowl. It's explained in detail in parenting books, I said, pretending not to notice Zhu Jing's glare. There are also video tutorials on the market, which are even more intuitive. Lin Feng left in disappointment. As soon as the door shut, Zhu Jing blew up. What do you mean by that? Were you deliberately trying to make it look like I can't do anything in front of my husband? I put down the rag and looked her straight in the eye. Mrs. Zhu, I'm only providing professional services according to the contract. Parent-child interaction isn't part of my responsibilities. Then why did you get up last night? Zhu Jing sneered, trying to play the good guy. The noise affected my sleep. I replied calmly. According to the contract, night care requires an extra fee. Let's just count this one as a free service. Zhu Jing's expression changed several times before finally turning into a cold snort. She suddenly stood up, the chair scraping harshly against the floor. I'm going to get some more sleep. Watch the child. She tossed out and left. I let out a quiet breath and went to check the nursery. The baby was sleeping soundly, its little face flushed pink. I noticed that a bottle of premium diaper rash cream had been added to the changing table, and even the label was entirely in English. It looked like Zhu Jing had ordered professional gear online overnight, trying to save face. At 10 in the morning, the baby woke up. I followed my usual routine, changed the diaper, fed the baby, and recorded the time and amount. Just as I was about to put the child back in the crib, I noticed several red rashes on his buttocks. A diaper rash. In my previous life, I would have immediately taken a full set of care measures and explained to Zhu Jing that this was caused by the diaper material being unsuitable, recommending that we switch brands. Now, I simply applied a little diaper rash cream and briefly noted, mild diaper rash, handled. Zhu Jing only got up at noon. When she saw the logbook, she frowned. Did the baby get a diaper rash? I've already applied diaper cream. I replied briefly. What caused it? She pressed, her tone laced with blame. Was it because you didn't change the diaper in time? All the diaper changing records are in the notebook. I pointed at the clock on the wall. It's my lunch break now. If you have any questions, you can check the surveillance footage. Zhu Jing had cameras installed in the common areas to monitor the nanny's work. In my previous life, I felt offended by it, but in this life, I thought it was perfect. It saved me from being blamed for everything. In the afternoon, I went about preparing the postpartum meals and baby supplies as usual. Zhu Jing stayed hidden in the master bedroom until Lin Feng got off work before coming out. To my surprise, Lin Feng came home especially early today, and he was carrying a book titled The Complete Guide to Newborn Care. "Mrs. Zhou, I bought a book," he said excitedly, showing it to me. "Could you help me see which tips are the most practical?" I caught a glimpse of Zhu Jing standing in the shadows of the hallway, her expression dark. "It's a good thing that Mr. Lin is eager to learn." I deliberately raised my voice so Zhu Jing could hear. "However, it would be best to study it together with your wife. That way, you'll be on the same page, which is better for the baby." Lin Feng scratched his head. Jing doesn't have the patience to read, so why don't you demonstrate it directly, honey?" Zhu Jing suddenly appeared, grabbing Lin Feng's arm. "I was just thinking I should learn how to bathe the baby. Will you practice with me?" Lin Feng nodded in pleasant surprise. Completely missing the victorious glint that flashed in his wife's eyes, I tactfully retreated to the kitchen to prepare dinner, listening to the clumsy attempts of the couple in the bathroom and the baby's frightened cries. At dinner, Zhu Jing was unusually quiet, while Lin Feng kept rambling on about child-rearing knowledge he had read in books, completely failing to notice his wife's increasingly sour expression. "The book says sleep training can start at 3 months, bang." Zhu Jing slapped her chopsticks down on the table. The book, if you trust the book that much, why don't you just marry it instead?" Lin Feng froze. "I'm just trying to help. Zhu Jing sneered. "Do you know how many hours I sleep? Every day. Do you know how painful cracked nipples are? All you do is read books and ask the nanny what to do. What do you take me for?" I quietly left the dining room. In my previous life, I would have kindly mediated and taught Lin Feng how to be considerate of a new mother's emotions. Now, this argument was exactly what I wanted to see. Back in the guest room, I locked the door and took out my phone. In my contacts there was a name, Mrs. Zhang, a reasonable client I had served in my previous life. Her due date was 2 months away. "Hello, Mrs. Zhang, this is Zhou Wan." I lowered my voice. "I heard you need a maternity nanny. My contract ends at the end of the month." After the call ended, I felt a lot more relaxed, with an alternative job lined up. I didn't have to worry about being left without anything to fall back on once things with Zhu Jing ended. Just as I was about to turn off my phone, a WeChat message popped up. It was Wang Feng, another postpartum nanny in the neighborhood. "Sister Zhou Jing is asking around about you in the owners group, asking whether anyone has used your services and what your attitude is like." I let out a cold laugh and replied, "Let her ask." Putting down my phone, I noticed a shadow moving under the crack at the door. Someone was eavesdropping outside. I deliberately yawned loudly, turned off the lights, and pretended to be asleep. The shadow lingered for a while before finally leaving. In the darkness, a cold smile curled at the corners of my mouth. "Zhu Jing, this has only just begun." At 2:08 a.m., the first cry came through the baby monitor. I opened my eyes, but did not move. The crying quickly turned sharp and frantic, like a drill boring straight into my temples. The master bedroom door was suddenly shoved open, and Zhu Jing stumbled toward the nursery, muttering filthy curses under her breath. Again, how annoying. I rolled over and pressed a pillow over my head. In my past life, I would have gotten up immediately, soothed the baby's colic with professional skill, and patiently taught Zhu Jing how to handle it, but now, I only turned on my phone and glanced at the time. There were still more than 4 hours left before my shift. The baby's crying turned into heart-wrenching screams. Then came Zhu Jing's hysterical shouting, "Shut up, I told you to shut up." With a dull thud, my heart clenched. My professional instincts made me spring up from the bed, but reason pressed me back down. "This isn't my child. I kept telling myself, Zhu Jing wouldn't really hurt her own flesh and blood, probably not. The crying stopped abruptly, followed by Zhu Jing's panicked muttering, it's okay, mommy didn't mean to. I quietly got out of bed and pressed my ear against the door. After a rustling sound, the baby's crying started up again, this time much weaker, with frightened sobs. Lin Feng, are you dead? Get up and help, Zhu Jing screamed. A muffled male voice responded, followed by heavy footsteps. Lin Feng had finally been woken up. Can you even be a mother? Lin Feng's voice carried a rare edge of anger. The child is crying like that and you're not even doing anything. I'm not doing anything. Zhu Jing's voice suddenly rose. You sleep like a dead pig every day, and you still have the nerve to say that to me. The arguing grew louder and louder, completely drowning out the baby's faint cries. I took a deep breath, opened the door, and walked out. The nursery door stood wide open, with Zhu Jing and Lin Feng facing each other, their faces twisted with anger. In the crib, the little one was crying so hard his face was red, his tiny fists flailing helplessly in the air. Need some help. I stood at the doorway, my voice calm and utterly unruffled. All three turned to look at me at the same time. Zhu Jing's eyes filled with anger and shame, Lin Feng's face was full of embarrassment, and the baby stretched out his little hand toward me, as if he had recognized that I was the only one who could save him. No need. Zhu Jing scooped up the child in one rough motion. We can handle it ourselves. The child cried even harder, his little face turning purple from holding his breath. Lin Feng stepped forward. Sister Zhou, could you please take a look? Is the child sick? Zhu Jing glared fiercely at her husband, but still reluctantly handed the child to me. As soon as the little one was in my arms, he quieted down a bit, sniffling as he rested his head on my shoulder. I felt his forehead. It was a little warm, but not a fever. I gently pressed on his abdomen. There was no obvious bloating. Finally, I checked the diaper. It was soaked through, and the edges had even rubbed the skin red. The diaper needs changing, I said briefly, placing the child back on the changing table. A flash of embarrassment crossed Zhu Jing's face. I just changed it 3 hours ago. Frequent nighttime urination means it needs to be changed more often. I took out a new diaper and changed it efficiently and professionally, especially this kind of cheap diaper. It has poor absorbency. Lin Feng frowned. Cheap? I bought the most expensive ones. Labels can be faked. I pointed to the blurry printing on the diaper. I suggest buying from a regular mall. Zhu Jing's expression turned ugly. In my past life, I would have reminded her tactfully and preserved her dignity. Now, I was simply stating the facts. After changing the diaper, the child quickly settled down. I put him back in the crib and was about to leave. Mrs. Zhou, Lin Feng called out to me. Could you teach us how to tell real diapers from fake ones? Zhu Jing suddenly cut in. Just look it up online. Why bother? Mrs. Zhou in the middle of the night, she pushed Lin Feng toward the door. Go back and sleep. Lin Feng was reluctantly pushed out of the room. Back in the guest room, I glanced at my phone. 3:17 a.m. After being woken up, it was hard to fall back asleep, so I simply opened my laptop and started organizing my work notes. In my past life, I wouldn't have been so petty, but now I record every extra minute of work, just in case Zhu Jing tries to make trouble. Early in the morning, I appeared in the kitchen right on time at 7 and started preparing breakfast. Lin Feng had rarely gotten up early and was sitting at the dining table in a daze, with heavy dark circles under his eyes. Is Mrs. Zhu still asleep? I asked casually, ladling millet porridge into a bowl. Lin Feng nodded and suddenly lowered his voice. Sister Zhou, I have a question. Are all postpartum women like this? Like what? I pretended not to understand. I mean, he weighed his words carefully, emotionally unstable, impatient with the child. I put the fried egg in front of him and said calmly, postpartum depression is very common, but child abuse is illegal. Lin Feng's face turned pale in an instant. Abuse? Jing wouldn't go that far. I didn't say anything. I turned around to cut the fruit. I suggest paying more attention to Madame's mental state. Lin Feng fell silent, mechanically eating his breakfast. As he was nearly finished, he suddenly asked, Sister Zhou, after your contract ends, can you renew it? I can pay more. The knife in my hand paused for a moment. I already have plans. He sighed in disappointment and was just about to say something else when Zhu Jing appeared at the doorway, disheveled and unkempt. What are you talking about? Nothing. Lin Feng quickly stood up. I'm going to work. Zhu Jing looked suspiciously at her husband's hurrying Departing figure then turned to me. I calmly handed over breakfast. Red date porridge replenishes qi and blood, eat it while it's hot. All morning, Zhu Jing was unusually quiet, mechanically feeding the baby, changing diapers, and then locking herself in the master bedroom. I was happy to have some peace and quiet and focused on taking care of the baby. The little one was especially clingy today. As soon as I took him out of my arms, he would cry and fuss. At noon, the doorbell suddenly rang. Zhu Jing rushed out of the bedroom as if she had been shocked. Don't open the door. It was too late. I had already opened the door. Standing outside was a meticulously dressed old lady in her 60s, with about 70% resemblance to Zhu Jing in her eyes and brows. Mom, Zhu Jing's voice immediately dropped an octave. The old lady's sharp gaze swept over me and the child in my arms, and she let out a cold snort. It took you this long to open the door. What shady thing were you doing, Zhu? Jing lowered her head like a grade schooler. The baby just fell asleep. So this is the top-notch postpartum nanny you spent a fortune to hire. The old lady, clearly Zhu Jing's mother, looked me up and down. Doesn't seem that impressive. I smiled and nodded. Hello, I'm Zhou Wen, neither warm nor cold, just the right professional attitude. The old lady walked straight into the living room and tossed her handbag onto the sofa. Let me see the child. I handed her the baby. She checked the child's limbs and head roughly, then frowned. Why is he so thin? Haven't you been feeding him enough? He's been fed according to the standard amount, I replied calmly. Diaper rash. The old woman suddenly noticed the red spots on the child's buttocks, and her voice immediately rose. How are you taking care of him? Zhu Jing hurriedly explained. It's a problem with the diaper quality. We already. Excuses. The old woman interrupted her. When I raised you, you didn't have so many problems. Young people nowadays can't endure even a little hardship. I quietly retreated to the kitchen to prepare lunch. Through the half-open door, I could hear the old lady continuing to scold Zhu Jing. The house is such a mess. What are you doing all day? We even hired a confinement nanny, and it's still this sloppy. Zhu Jing tried to explain something in a low voice, but was quickly interrupted by her mother. And your husband, why isn't he at work at this hour? He went to the company. Always thinking about work. He doesn't even care about the child. The old lady's voice was full of contempt. And you too, you can't even keep your own man under control. We raised you for nothing all these years. The plate trembled slightly in my hands. In my previous life, I would have gone out to smooth things over and praised Zhu Jing as a good mother. Today, I just calmly chopped the vegetables, letting those hurtful words stab at Zhu Jing like knives. At lunch, the old woman picked at every dish. The soup is too salty, the vegetables are too old, and this can even be called postpartum meals. I smiled in response. The flavor can be adjusted according to your needs. Zhu Jing kept her head down, eating silently. The old lady suddenly turned to her. Where's your mother-in-law? Why didn't she come to help? She isn't feeling well. Zhu Jing's voice was barely audible. I knew you were faking being sick, the old lady sneered. I told you back then that you married the wrong man. Do you believe it now? Zhu Jing's chopsticks froze in midair. Her eyes reddening, the old lady turned a blind eye and kept lecturing her. Look at your cousin, she married so well. Her mother-in-law even hired 2 nannies for her. The meal ended in oppressive silence. When the old lady was about to leave, she pulled me aside. You, take good care of my grandson. My daughter doesn't know any better, so please be patient with her. I smiled and nodded, thinking that if you knew how I was being patient, you'd probably be furious to death. In the afternoon, Zhu Jing's mood had obviously plummeted to rock bottom. She held the child mechanically, her eyes hollow. I completed my work step by step, without a single extra word of concern. In the evening, Lin Feng came back earlier than usual. Seeing the empty living room, he visibly breathed a sigh of relief. Where's Jingjing? He asked me in a low voice. Bedroom. Her mother came by. Lin Feng's face immediately fell. That old witch came to pick a fight again. I didn't respond, just handed him a cup of tea. He took the cup, and his fingers accidentally brushed mine. He immediately snatched his hand back as if electrocuted. This detail made me sneer inwardly. In my previous life, I would never have noticed such a small gesture, but now I could see it clearly. This man had an obvious reaction to women other than his wife. Ms. Zhou, Lin Feng suddenly lowered his voice. Do you think I'm a failure as a husband and father? I pretended to tidy up the baby supplies. This is your family matter, so it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment, but you've seen so many families, he said anxiously. Is Jingjing like this? Normal. I put down the clothes in my hands and looked straight into his eyes. Mr. Lin. I suggest you spend more time accompanying your wife to see a doctor instead of asking a nanny." Lin Feng froze, then gave a bitter smile. "You're right, I've become too dependent on you." A chill ran down my spine at those words. In my past life, it was precisely this couple's excessive dependence that ultimately brought about my death. I quickly put some distance between us. "I only provide services according to the contract. The parent-child relationship has to be built by you yourselves." Lin Feng nodded thoughtfully, then suddenly said, "I'll be on a business trip for 3 days next week. Could you spend more time with Jingjing? I'll be conscientious during the working hours stipulated in the contract." I replied flawlessly. "Other time is private rest time." He sighed in disappointment and was just about to say something else when Zhu Jing appeared at the end of the hallway. "What are you two plotting again?" Lin Feng immediately put on a smile. "Nothing much. Just asking Sister Zhou some parenting questions." Zhu Jing let out a cold laugh. "If you care so much about the child, why don't you ask me?" Just as another argument was about to break out, I used preparing dinner as an excuse and left the scene. At 7 in the evening, according to the contract, I could get off work, but today, I decided to take a walk in the residential complex garden and, while I was at it, get in touch with some other postpartum nannies. Near the children's play area in the residential complex, several nannies and postpartum nannies were gathered together chatting. I recognized one of them as Wang Feng, whom I had known in my previous life. "Sister Zhou," Wang Feng greeted me warmly. "I heard you went to work for Zhu Jing's family." I nodded and joined their casual chatter. The topic quickly turned to their employers. "Zhu Jing," one plump nanny lowered her voice. "She drove away a postpartum nanny just last month, saying the woman stole her jewelry. I heard it was because she thought the nanny was too pretty." Another young nanny snickered. Wang Feng nudged my arm. "Sister Zhou, be careful. Zhu Jing has been asking around about you in the homeowners group chat. She's asked several people about your service attitude." I smiled without saying a word. If I had heard such words in my past life, I would have been terrified and uneasy, but now I only found them ridiculous. Let them inquire all they want. My professional record is impeccable. By the time I returned to Zhu Jing's home, it was already almost 9 o'clock. The room was quiet, with only the nursery lit up. I gently pushed the door open and saw Lin Feng awkwardly holding the baby and humming a tune, with Zhu Jing nowhere to be seen. Seeing me, Lin Feng let out a sigh of relief. "Sister Zhou, the baby has been crying all this time, and Jingjing went to take a shower." I walked over to check and said, "The baby is hungry. It's been 3.5 hours since the last feeding." Lin Feng suddenly understood and hurried off to make the formula. Watching him fumble around in a fluster, I suddenly remembered how, in my past life, I had patiently taught him how to test the temperature and how to hold the baby while feeding. Now, I merely watched coldly from the sidelines. By the time Zhu Jing came in drying her hair, Lin Feng had successfully gotten the bottle into the baby's mouth. Her expression darkened instantly. "Who told you to feed the baby?" "Baby is hungry," Lin Feng said innocently. "Can't I feed the baby?" "Why do you have to interfere?" Zhu Jing snatched the bottle away. "Get out." Lin Feng left in disgrace. Zhu Jing turned to me, her gaze fierce. "Did you teach him that?" "I just got back," I replied calmly. "It's my break time now. If you need anything, please wait until working hours tomorrow." As I walked out of the nursery, I heard the sound of Zhu Jing slamming the bottle hard onto the table. Back in the guest room, I locked the door and took a small notebook from under my pillow, carefully recording everything that had happened today, especially Zhu Jing's suspected abuse of the baby, along with her words and behavior. These notes might save my life someday. The morning sunlight pierced through the cracks in the curtains and stung my eyes. I jolted awake. I glanced at my phone. 6:30, half an hour earlier than the alarm. After last night's farce, I hadn't slept soundly. Broken sobs came intermittently from outside the door. I got out of bed quietly and pressed my ear against the door. It was Zhu Jing's voice, restrained and broken. "I can't take it anymore. Every day it's like this." There was no response. She must have been on the phone. I carefully turned the doorknob and pushed the door open a crack. Zhu Jing was sitting on the living room sofa with her back to me, her phone pressed to her ear, her shoulders shaking non-stop. "You don't understand at all." She suddenly raised her voice, then immediately lowered it. "The baby won't stop crying. And Lin Feng isn't taking care of anything. That confinement nanny, yes, her, she wears a cold face all day, as if I owe her money or something." I curled the corners of my mouth into a silent smile. The me from my past life would have felt hurt and aggrieved. Hearing that, but now I only found it ironic, I quietly closed the door and began washing up. Cold water splashed onto my face, and the woman in the mirror had an eerily calm expression. This face was already worlds apart from the warm-hearted Joe one of my previous life. At exactly 7 o'clock, I showed up in the kitchen on time. Zhu Jing was no longer in the living room. On the sofa there was only a sunken impression and a few crumpled tissues. I began preparing breakfast, specifically making a bowl of calming lily bulb porridge. Zhu Jing did not show up until 9 o'clock. Her eyes swollen like peaches and her face frighteningly pale. She mechanically scooped up the porridge and put it into her mouth, staring blankly at the wall. Mrs. Zhu, do you have any special plans today? I broke the silence. She turned to me slowly, as if only just noticing my presence. What? Things like baby swimming or postpartum recovery classes. I reminded her calmly, these need to be booked in advance. Zhu Jing's eyes suddenly sharpened, a flicker of irritation flashing across them. Are you implying that I haven't taken good care of myself? Just a routine inquiry. I handed over the red date tea at the perfect temperature, according to the contract. I need to understand your schedule. She snatched the teacup, and even though the tea splashed onto her hand, she seemed not to notice at all. I'm not going anywhere today. Satisfied, I nodded and turned to the nursery. The baby was already awake, quietly playing with the crib mobile. Seeing me come in, he grinned with his toothless mouth and excitedly waved his little hands and feet. My heart softened for a moment, but quickly hardened again. This wasn't my child, and I shouldn't get emotionally attached. At 10 in the morning, the doorbell rang. Zhu Jing rushed out of the bedroom like a startled rabbit. Don't open it. I pretended not to hear and opened the door without stopping. It was the delivery guy, holding a small package in his hand. Ms. Zhu Jing's package, he handed over the delivery slip. Zhu Jing snatched the package away and shot me a wary glance. My personal belongings. I tactfully retreated to the nursery, but through the crack in the door, I saw Zhu Jing furtively unwrap the package. It was a tiny camera. I let out a cold laugh and kept giving the baby a massage. At noon, while Zhu Jing was napping, I checked the common areas. Sure enough, there was an inconspicuous little black on the bookshelf in the living room, pointed straight at the area where I usually moved around. In my past life, I would have been angry or wronged, but now I only find it laughable. I deliberately organized the baby supplies in front of the camera, my movements professional and beyond reproach. At 3 in the afternoon, the baby suddenly started crying non-stop. I checked every possible cause: clean diaper, normal temperature, not hunger. It might be that colic had flared up again. In my previous life, I would have immediately taken all the necessary measures to ease things, but now, I simply noted down the symptoms and the time, then went to knock on Zhu Jing's door. Mrs. Zhu, the baby has been crying non-stop. You may need to come take a look. Zhu Jing opened the door irritably. Aren't you the top-rated nanny? You can't even handle something this small. According to the contract, any abnormal situation needs to be reported to the parents. I replied calmly, especially when there's suspected pathological crying. Pathological? Her face turned pale at once. What do you mean? Is the baby sick? It requires professional judgment. I was perfectly non-committal. I suggest you observe him yourself. Zhu Jing stumbled toward the nursery, and I followed slowly behind. The baby was already crying with his face all red, his little belly twitching one spasm after another. Zhu Jing stood there at a loss, her eyes full of panic. What should we do? Should we take him to the hospital? I stepped forward and touched the baby's tummy. It might be colic. Do you need me to handle it? Of course I do, Zhu Jing nearly shouted. What are you even good for? I didn't take her attitude to heart and simply began a professional gas relief massage. In less than 5 minutes, the baby calmed down and let out a loud burp. Zhu Jing's expression was extremely complex: anger, shame, jealousy, and gratitude all mixed together. Why didn't you handle it earlier? She ultimately chose anger. You did not authorize me to handle abnormal situations on my own, I replied calmly. Article 6 of the contract appendix clearly states that. Zhu Jing was left speechless and finally stormed off in a rage. I gently patted the baby's back, thinking that this woman was truly pathetic and laughable. In the evening, Lin Feng sent a text saying that the company had a social engagement and he wouldn't be home for dinner. After seeing the message, Zhu Jing slammed the phone onto the sofa. Another social engagement? That's the 3rd time this week, she yelled hysterically. He's just avoiding me. I silently set out dinner and was about to retreat to my room. Zhu Jing suddenly called out to me, Sister Zhou, what do you think of Lin Feng? This was a trap. In my past life, I would have foolishly praised Lin Feng for being studious and responsible, only to deepen Zhu Jing's suspicion. Now, I simply shrugged. I'm not familiar with him, so it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment. Does he often talk to you? Zhu Jing's eyes swept across my face like searchlights, only for necessary work communication. I looked straight into her eyes. Mrs. Zhu, I am a professional. Please respect my professional ethics. A trace of awkwardness flashed across Zhu Jing's face, and then she became aggressive again. Then why does he always come to you with parenting questions? Why doesn't he ask me? You should ask him that, I said, putting down my napkin. If there's nothing else, I'm going to rest now. Back in the guest room, I locked the door and let out a long breath. Zhu Jing's suspicion and depression had developed even faster and more severely than in my previous life. This is a dangerous signal. But it also proves my strategy is effective. She is reaping what she sowed. The phone suddenly vibrated. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. Mrs. Zhou, I'm Mrs. Zhang. Li Feng introduced me to you, a gentle female voice said. I heard your contract ends at the end of the month. I'd like to book in advance. My eyes lit up. Mrs. Zhang was a reasonable client I had served in my past life. She came from a well-off family and was generous by nature. More importantly, she had given birth while unmarried, so there was no sensitive factor like a husband involved. Yes, it ends at the end of the month. I lowered my voice. When is your due date? By the middle of next month. It will line up perfectly with your side, Mrs. Zhang said with a smile. Li Feng praised you to the skies, saying you're the most professional postpartum nanny she's ever seen. We briefly discussed the requirements and compensation, and agreed to sign the formal contract before the current one ended. After hanging up, I was in a great mood, with another job lined up. I no longer had to worry about having nowhere to go after my work with Zhu Jing ended. Just as I was about to shut down the computer, a WeChat message popped up. It was from Lin Feng. Sister Zhou, how is Jingjing today? I hesitated for a moment, then still replied, her emotions are not very stable. I'd recommend spending more time with her. He replied quickly, the company has a big project recently, and I really can't get away. Could I trouble you to keep her company a little more? I let out a cold laugh and replied, I'm a postpartum nanny, not a therapist. Lin Feng sent an awkward emoji, followed by a long message. I know this is beyond the scope of the contract, but Jingjing has been acting very strangely lately. Last night I found her secretly crying in the bathroom, and this morning I saw her searching can postpartum depression harm babies. My heart tightened all at once. In my last life, Zhu Jing had emotional problems too, but not to this extent. Did my indifference accelerate her breakdown? No. I immediately dismissed that idea. The root of Zhu Jing's problem lay in her own personality and her marital situation. I was simply no longer acting as a buffer like I had in my previous life. Just as I was about to reply, a dull thud suddenly came from outside the door, followed by the sound of glass shattering. I quickly put down my phone and opened the door to check. In the living room, Zhu Jing stood amid a floor of shattered glass, holding half of a wine glass in her hand, her eyes wild. He won't even answer my calls, she muttered to herself. He's probably with that little secretary again. I silently brought over a broom and cleaned up the debris. Zhu Jing suddenly grabbed my wrist. Sister Zhou, do you think all men are like this? Once they get what they want, they don't cherish it anymore. Her fingers were icy cold, and her eyes were bloodshot. I gently pulled away. You've had too much to drink. I suggest you rest. I'm not drunk, Zhu Jing shouted, but then she swayed and collapsed back onto the sofa. I'm just too tired. Her voice suddenly broke, and tears rolled down in large drops. Why is no one helping me? Why does everyone hate me? At that moment, I almost softened. In my previous life, I would have sat down to comfort her, shared stories of other mothers, and told her that these feelings were all normal. But now, I simply handed her a box of tissues. Would you like me to call Mr. Lin back for you? Zhu Jing suddenly looked up, her eyes turning fierce. Why call him back? So I can look at that hypocritical face of his. She swayed as she stood up. I want to sleep. Don't let the baby disturb me. Watching her stumble back into the bedroom, I let out a long sigh. The situation was even worse than I had imagined. Zhu Jing's mental state was rapidly deteriorating, and Lin Feng had chosen to avoid it. This family is heading toward collapse, and I'm accelerating the process. A trace of guilt rose in my heart, but it was quickly suppressed by reason. This isn't my fault. In my previous life, I did everything I could to help them, and what was the result? What I got in return was a cold blade. Back in the guest room, I took out that little notebook and carefully recorded everything from today: Zhu Jing's emotional breakdown, her apparent drinking, her neglect of the baby. All of these were important evidence. After closing the notebook, I glanced at my phone. Lin Feng had sent another message: Sister Zhou, is Jingjing okay? I called her, but no one answered. I didn't reply. Let them sort it out themselves. I had already done everything I could. It was late at night when a baby monitor suddenly crackled with a crying sound. I glanced at the clock, 1:15 a.m. The crying continued for 5 minutes, and Zhu Jing did not appear. 10 minutes later, I sighed and got up to go to the nursery. The little guy was crying so hard that his face was red, and his diaper was soaked through. I skillfully changed his diaper and gently patted him to comfort him. Just as I was about to leave, a shadow appeared at the doorway. It was Zhu Jing, wearing wrinkled pajamas, her eyes dark and sullen. I knew it, she sneered. You're just hoping I wouldn't show up so you can show off how capable you are, huh? I didn't argue, only stepped aside to let her pass. The baby has already been taken care of, you can go straight to rest. Zhu Jing blocked the doorway, refusing to move. Zhou Wen, what exactly are you? My heartbeat suddenly quickened. I don't understand what you mean. You clearly have the ability, but deliberately didn't help me. She narrowed her eyes. You were watching me make a fool of myself, weren't you? I took a deep breath. Mrs. Zhu, I'm only providing services as specified in the contract. Extra emotional support is not included. Emotional support? Zhu Jing suddenly let out a shrill laugh. Huh, nice way to put it. You're just a cold-hearted. The baby was awakened by the noise and started crying again. Zhu Jing whirled around toward the crib. Shut up. I instinctively stepped forward and stood between her and the baby. Mrs. Zhu, you need to rest. I suggest you go back to your room and sleep. Zhu Jing's eyes turned dangerous. She slowly leaned closer to me, her breath reeking of alcohol. Zhou Wen, remember this. This is my home. My child, you are nothing. I looked at her calmly. Of course, I'm just a maternity nurse. I'll be leaving at the end of the month. That sentence seemed to provoke her. Zhu Jing's expression changed several times before finally turning into a cold snort. She turned and left, slamming the bedroom door hard behind her. I let out a long sigh of relief and returned to the crib. The little one had already fallen asleep again, with tears still clinging to his tiny face. I gently wiped away the tear. Feeling a swirl of mixed emotions back in the guest room, I couldn't sleep at all. Zhu Jing's mental state had already reached a dangerous edge, and I might have been the last straw that broke her. My phone lit up. It was Lin Feng again. Sister Zhou, I'll be back first thing tomorrow morning. Please keep an eye on Jingjing tonight. I didn't reply. I just turned off my phone. Outside the window, a cold moon hung high. There were still 12 days left until the contract ended. 12 days could bring many things. Morning sunlight pierced through the crack in the curtains and into my eyes, jolting me awake. After the confrontation with Zhu Jing last night, I slept very lightly, and my dreams were fragmented. I glanced at my phone. 6:20. 10 minutes before the alarm, from outside the door came a rustling sound, as if someone were deliberately softening their footsteps. I held my breath and listened quietly. The footsteps stopped at my door, followed by a faint metallic clink. Someone was trying to pick my lock. I got out of bed silently, picked up the pepper spray from the nightstand, and stood behind the door. The doorknob turned gently, but because I had locked it from the inside before going to bed, the person outside couldn't succeed. Sis Zhou, are you awake? Zhu Jing's voice came from outside the door, sweet to the point of cloying. A world apart from last night, I waited 3 seconds before replying. Just woke up. What's up? The baby seems to have a fever. Her voice carried an intentionally anxious tone. Can you take a look? I quickly put on my coat and opened the door. Zhu Jing was standing outside, neatly dressed and perfectly made up, nothing like a mother anxiously worried about a sick child. Her eyes quickly scanned my room, pausing for a moment on my suitcase. Did you take your temperature? I asked, stepping sideways to block her view and casually closing the door. I did. 38.2 degrees C. She reported an exact number, but her eyes flickered. In the nursery, the baby was indeed more irritable than usual, but when I took out the ear thermometer and measured, the display clearly showed 37.6 degrees C, slightly elevated, but not a fever. I glanced at Zhu Jing, who awkwardly turned her face away. It's a little warm, but it's not a fever, I said calmly. I recommend drinking more water and keeping an eye on it. Zhu Jing suddenly became agitated. How is that possible? I just took it and it was clearly over 38 degrees Celsius. Did you use the wrong method? I silently handed her the ear thermometer. You can measure it again yourself. Zhu Jing clumsily operated the device, but several times she failed to place it correctly into the baby's ear canal. The child became uncomfortable from her handling and started crying in the end. The reading was still 37.6 degrees C. Strange, she muttered to herself. Just now it clearly, I didn't expose her lie. I simply checked the baby for other symptoms. When I lifted the clothing, I found large red rashes on the child's chest and back. Eczema, and it was already slightly oozing. The eczema is quite severe. I pointed out the problem. Medication is needed. Zhu Jing's expression changed. How could that be? I apply lotion to him every day. I didn't explain, as I had in my past life, the various causes and care essentials of eczema. I simply said, I suggest seeing a doctor. Aren't you a top-tier postpartum nanny? You can't even handle this little problem. Zhu Jing's tone turned sharp. I think you just don't want to work. I looked at her calmly. According to the contract, medical issues need to be handled by a professional doctor. I can assist with care, but I can't diagnose or prescribe medication. Zhu Jing opened her mouth to argue, but in the end she only glared at me fiercely and turned to get her phone. I heard her call Lin Feng, her voice instantly turning soft and pitiful. Honey, the baby is sick, and that nanny isn't taking care of anything. Can you come back? While she was on the phone, I carefully checked the baby's condition. The eczema was indeed pretty severe, but not yet dangerous. In my past life, I would have immediately taken a series of measures such as using a cold compress and applying ointment, and patiently explained preventive methods to Zhu Jing. Now, I simply recorded the symptoms and the time, then waited for Zhu Jing to make the decision herself. Zhu Jing soon came back, with a triumphant expression on her face. Lin Feng is coming back right away to take the baby to the hospital. Go. Get ready for going out. I nodded and began packing the diaper bag. Zhu Jing stood beside me, monitoring every move I made and criticizing me from time to time. Did you bring enough wet wipes? You need to bring an extra baby bottle as a spare. Just as I had finished packing and was about to zip up my bag, Zhu Jing suddenly pressed down on my hand. Wait, she dug out a box of diaper rash cream. We have to bring this. The hospital's diapers are no good. I noticed that her nails were trimmed sharp, and there was a fresh cut on the ring finger of her right hand, as if it had been sliced by some sharp instrument. She didn't have that injury when she searched my room last night. Lin Feng rushed back home half an hour later, in a suit and tie, clearly having left an important meeting abruptly. As soon as he walked in, he urgently asked, "How is the baby?" Zhu Jing immediately turned into a fragile, helpless little woman, throwing herself into her husband's arms with red-rimmed eyes. I'm so scared. The baby's covered in a rash. Lin Feng patted her back reassuringly, then turned to me. Sister Zhou, is it serious? I recommend seeing a doctor, I repeated, handing him the diaper bag. The trip to the hospital was unexpectedly calm. Zhu Jing, uncharacteristically, did not continue to make things difficult for me. Instead, she held the baby tightly the whole way, showing an unusual maternal tenderness. Lin Feng kept looking at his wife through the rearview mirror while driving, his expression complicated. The doctor diagnosed it as eczema and prescribed an ointment and antihistamines. When explaining the cause, the doctor asked specifically, has anyone in the family had significant mood swings recently? The mother's emotions can directly affect the baby. Zhu Jing's expression immediately turned ugly. Lin Feng coughed awkwardly. I've been very busy with work. Maybe my wife is just a little tired. It's not just tiredness, the doctor said seriously. Postpartum depression is very common, but if it isn't addressed in time, it can affect the whole family. He glanced meaningfully at the rash on the baby's body. On the way home, the atmosphere in the car was so heavy it felt like you could wring water out of it. Zhu Jing held the sleeping baby tightly in her arms, staring blankly out the window. Lin Feng tried several times to speak, but in the end, he stayed silent. After lunch, Lin Feng called me to the balcony. Sister Zhou, Jingjing's condition, what do you think? I replied cautiously, I'm not a doctor, so I can't really say, but she wasn't like this before, Lin Feng said in distress, running his fingers through his hair. When we were dating, she was gentle and considerate. During pregnancy, she had a bit of a temper, but it was still okay. How did she become like this after giving birth? Postpartum hormonal changes can be significant, I said objectively. Combined with the stress of caring for a child, it's easy for emotions to fluctuate. Lin Feng suddenly grabbed my hand. Sister Zhou, can you stay a while longer? I can pay more, double. Jingjing is like this now, and I really can't rest assured. I gently drew my hand back. Mr. Lin, I've already arranged my next job. I suggest you hire a professional therapist or a childcare nanny. His expression immediately fell. Are you really this indifferent? Those words stabbed into my heart like a knife. In my previous life, I had offered enthusiastic help, only to end up dying under a blade. Now choosing to protect oneself is being accused of being cold-hearted. Human nature is truly ironic. I'm a maternity matron, not a psychiatrist, I replied calmly. Contractual spirit means each person does their own job. Lin Feng left in disappointment. I returned to the guest room and started packing. There were still 7 days left until the contract ended, so I decided to get everything ready in advance to avoid panicking at the last minute. When I opened the drawer, I found that someone had been through my things. My notebook had been moved, and there was a dark red stain on one edge. On closer inspection, it was blood, as expected. Zhu Jing rummaged through my things last night and accidentally cut her hand. I let out a cold laugh and took out the little notebook where I recorded Zhu Jing's abnormal behavior, writing this incident down in detail as well. Then I checked the other corners of the room. A tiny black object had appeared in the gap beside the bedside table. I pretended not to notice and let that tiny recording device keep working. In the afternoon, Zhu Jing suddenly knocked on the door and said she wanted to consult me about eczema care. I followed her to the nursery and found that she had prepared paper and a pen. As if she were about to take notes, repeat in detail the methods the doctor mentioned, she ordered, her tone stiff. I simply repeated the doctor's advice without adding any extra personal experience. Zhu Jing listened very carefully, but her gaze would occasionally drift to my left wrist, where I was wearing a branded watch given to me by my former employer. That watch is nice, she suddenly said. Do maternity nanny salaries pay that well? A gift from my former employer, I replied calmly. Zhu Jing curled her lip. You must have been very close. I didn't respond, and simply continued explaining how to use the ointment. After the class ended, Zhu Jing suddenly asked, have you found your next employer? That's my private matter, I replied with a smile. Zhu Jing's expression darkened. Taking private jobs while working at my house isn't very proper, is it? My contract is for a fixed term, not a bond of servitude. I remained polite but firm. During work hours, I do my duty conscientiously and have a clear conscience. Zhu Jing suddenly stood up. Get out. I calmly left and, after returning to the guest room, immediately checked the recording device. Sure enough, the entire conversation had been recorded. I put it deep in the drawer and continued packing. At dinner, Lin Feng announced that he would be on a 2-day business trip next week. Zhu Jing immediately blew up. You know the baby is sick, and I still have to go see a psychiatrist. And you actually want to go on a business trip? The project is very important. I can't turn it down. Lin Feng weakly defended himself. What project is more important than your wife and child? Zhu Jing slammed down her chopsticks. Do you have someone else outside? Lin Feng's expression changed drastically. What nonsense are you talking about? Me talking nonsense? Zhu Jing cried out shrilly. Then why do you keep avoiding me? Why do you sneak around talking to Zhou Wen? Why, that's enough. Lin Feng slammed the table and sprang up. Sister Zhou is a professional. What's wrong with me asking her for advice on parenting? You don't know anything yourself, and you still won't let me ask someone else. Zhu Jing froze as if struck by lightning, tears instantly welling up in her eyes. You actually. I quietly stood up, preparing to slip back into the room. In this kind of family dispute, the farther away, the better. Zhou Wen, Zhu Jing suddenly called out to me. Are you satisfied, stirring up trouble in our marriage? Do you feel proud of yourself? I stopped in my tracks, turned around, and looked at her calmly. Ms. Zhu, I have never interfered in your family matters. If you have any doubts, you can check the surveillance cameras at home. Lin Feng also came to his senses. Jingjing, you're going too far. Sister Zhou has always been very professional. It's you who, get out, all of you. Zhu Jing screamed hysterically, flipping over the dining table with one sweep. The sound of shattered bowls and plates woke the baby, and cries immediately rang out from the nursery. Lin Feng ran to take care of the child, while I began cleaning up the mess on the floor. Zhu Jing stood to the side, her chest heaving violently, her eyes fixed on me with a dark, hostile look. You're leaving soon, aren't you? She suddenly said in a sinister voice. I looked up at her. According to the contract, There are still 7 days left. Zhu Jing let out a cold laugh. 7 days. That's a long time. I didn't respond, and just kept picking up the fragment in the end. Zhu Jing shot me one last glare and turned to go to the nursery. It was late at night, and I was lying in bed but had no sleepiness at all. Zhu Jing's last words were like a sword hanging over my head. 7 days. That's a long time. Was that a threat? In my previous life, she made her move. One day before my contract ended, my phone suddenly vibrated. It was a message from Mrs. Zhang. Sister Zhou, I've already drafted the contract. When are you free to come take a look? I replied, can I come in 3 days? My contract is about to end here. Mrs. Zhang immediately replied with a smiling face, that's great, the baby room is all ready. We've just been waiting for you to come. After putting down my phone, I felt a little more at ease. With a new place to go, I no longer had to worry about income. Now the only thing left to do was to get through these final 7 days safely. I got up and checked the recording device again to make sure it had enough battery. Then I took the pepper spray out from under the pillow and placed it within easy reach. Outside the window, a waning moon hung high, casting a ghastly pale light in the darkness. In the nursery, the baby's cries came in fits and starts, accompanied by Zhu Jing's impatient soothing and Lin Feng's weary sighs. This family is falling apart, and I will stand by coldly and watch it collapse. A piercing scream tore through the morning silence. I jolted upright in bed and glanced at my phone. 5:40 a.m. With only the faintest hint of dawn, the scream came from the master bedroom. It was Zhu Jing's voice. Lin Feng, get up. Then came the dull thud of something heavy hitting the floor, followed by the man's muffled protest. I quietly got out of bed and pressed my ear against the door. The couple was fighting again, and it sounded more intense than ever before. This is the third time. Zhu Jing's voice was shrill and piercing. You've snuck out in the middle of the night to make phone calls for 3 straight days. Who is it? Just who is so important? Lin Feng's response was hard to make out. Only a low, hurried defense coming through. Work. Talking about work at 3 in the morning. Zhu Jing laughed hysterically. Do you take me for an idiot? The baby's crying joined the chaos. I hesitated for a moment and decided not to get involved. According to the contract, my working hours start at 7, and family disputes are not within the scope of service. The argument lasted nearly half an hour, ending with a deafening slam of the door. Through the gap in the curtain, I saw Lin Feng rush out of the house disheveled, get into his car, and speed away. At 7 sharp, I was right on time in the kitchen, starting to prepare breakfast. Zhu Jing didn't show up until 9 o'clock, her eyes swollen red like peaches, and a suspicious red mark on her left cheek. She mechanically chewed the oatmeal porridge I had prepared, staring blankly at the tabletop. Mrs. Zhu, do you need me to give the baby a massage today? I broke the silence. Zhu Jing suddenly looked up, the anger in her eyes making me instinctively take half a step back. Now you know how to take the initiative. Weren't you always so cold before? I maintained a professional smile. Touch massage is within the scope of the contract services, and I have always been doing it. Contract. Zhu Jing suddenly slammed the bowl hard onto the table. All you know is using the contract as an excuse. The postpartum nurses at other people's homes all do their best, but you're like a robot. I put down the spoon and looked her straight in the eyes. Mrs. Zhu, I have strictly fulfilled all the terms of the contract, and have even completed some of the work beyond what was required. If there is anything you're dissatisfied with, you can point to specific examples. Zhu Jing's expression changed several times, and finally turned into a cold sneer. Specific examples? Fine. The night the baby had colic, you clearly knew how to massage but deliberately refused to teach us. The baby's diaper rash, you just applied some ointment carelessly and then ignored it. When I was falling apart emotionally, you didn't even offer a single word of comfort. I calmly took out my phone and pulled up a document. This is the detailed work log. On the night of the colic, I did provide emergency treatment, and the next day I gave written notice of the care points. As for the diaper rash, I dealt with it 7 times in total, and each time was recorded. As for emotional support, I paused. That really isn't within the scope of the contract. Zhu Jing stared wide-eyed at the records on my phone. Times, items, treatment methods, and even photo evidence attached. This detailed record was completely beyond her expectations. You prepared all this long ago. Her voice began to tremble. Did you plan this to deal with me? Just a professional habit. I put my phone away. Every client has a record like this. In case of disputes. Zhu Jing suddenly stood up. the chair scraping harshly against the floor. Zhou 1, I've had enough of you. I'm going to complain to the company about you today. Go ahead, I said calmly. My records can prove the quality of my work. Zhu Jing looked at me as if I were a monster, then stormed back into the bedroom in a rage and slammed the door hard. I let out a long sigh of relief and kept eating breakfast. In my past life, when I encountered this kind of baseless accusation, I would have felt wronged and cried. Now, I only found it ridiculous. I began preparing this detailed record on the very first day after my rebirth. Just to deal with today's situation. At 10 in the morning, the doorbell rang through the peephole. I saw it was Lin Feng. There were heavy dark circles under his eyes, and his suit was wrinkled, as if he hadn't come home all night. Sister Zhou, he lowered his voice as soon as he came in. Where's Jingjing? In the bedroom, I replied briefly. Did you two fight? Lin Feng gave a wry smile and carefully took off his leather shoes. She suspects I'm cheating and checked my phone in the middle of the night. I really couldn't take it anymore, so I stayed at a hotel for one night. I didn't respond, and just handed him a cup of tea. Lin Feng took the teacup, his fingers trembling slightly. Sister Zhou, I have an unreasonable favor to ask. I looked at him warily. Could we renew the contract? He said anxiously. I can give you a 50% raise. Jingjing is like this now. I really don't feel at ease leaving her alone with the baby. My heart skipped a beat. In my previous life, Lin Feng had also proposed renewing the contract, but back then it was because he was satisfied with my service. Now, however, it was out of distrust for his wife. Sorry, I've already promised the next family. I declined politely, and Ms. Zhu doesn't seem to like me very much. She's just jealous of you, Lin Feng blurted out, then realized he had misspoken and added awkwardly, I mean, she's emotionally unstable after giving birth, and nothing seems pleasing to her. Mr. Lin, I said, looking him straight in the eye, I suggest you pay more attention to your wife's mental health instead of changing nannies. Lin Feng froze, then gave a bitter smile. You're right, but I didn't respond. This isn't my problem, and it shouldn't be up to me to solve it. Lin Feng suddenly grabbed my hand. Sister Zhou, just help me out. Stay 2 more weeks. At least wait until I've got this project sorted out. I gently pulled my hand back. The contract ends in 4 days. I'll do my job right up until the last minute. But renewing it is impossible. Lin Feng sighed in disappointment and was about to say something else when the bedroom door suddenly opened. Zhu Jing stood at the doorway, her face ashen, a terrifying fury burning in her eyes. I knew it. Her voice was so low it was almost inaudible. You too. Behind my back, Lin Feng hastily stood up. Jingjing, you've misunderstood. I was just asking Sister Zhou whether we could renew the contract. Renewal? Zhu Jing let out a shrill laugh. Huh? A renewal discussed in bed, Mrs. Zhu, I interjected calmly. Please respect the facts. The content of our conversation can be verified by checking the surveillance footage. Zhu Jing's family had installed cameras in the common areas to monitor the nanny that, ironically, had now become my shield. Zhu Jing's expression twisted for a moment, then turned even more ferocious. The surveillance footage can be deleted. You think I don't know about your dirty little business? She suddenly rushed toward me. Get out of my house right now. I stepped back. According to the contract, I still have 4 days left in my service period. If you terminate it early, you'll need to pay liquidated damages. Liquidated damages? Zhu Jing laughed hysterically. Fine, how much? 100,000, 200,000, I can afford it. Lin Feng hurriedly stopped his wife. Jingjing, calm down. Sister Zhou has always been very professional. The problem is with our family. Zhu Jing suddenly turned to her husband. So you finally admitted it. You and her are the ones in a family, aren't you? Lin Feng was stunned by this absurd accusation. What nonsense are you talking about? Nonsense from me. Zhu Jing's voice suddenly dropped, carrying a terrifying calm. Then why did you call her dear in the middle of the night? Why are there photos of her on your phone? Why? What photo? Lin Feng looked blank. Zhu Jing took out her phone, pulled up a photo, and held it up in front of him. I glanced at it. It was a group photo from last week of Lin Feng holding the baby while I stood beside him guiding his pose, an utterly normal work scene. This is just parenting guidance, Lin Feng said, half amused and half exasperated. Sister Zhou was teaching me how to hold the child, taught in bed. Zhu Jing sneered. I took a deep breath. Mrs. Zhu, this is an insult to my professional ethics. If you insist on making such baseless accusations, I can terminate the contract immediately and reserve the right to pursue legal action. Zhu Jing was stunned by my firm attitude and was momentarily speechless. Lin Feng took the opportunity to hold her arm. Jing, you need to rest, I'll take you back to your room. Zhu Jing shook off her husband's hand, but she didn't continue her rage. She just stared at me with that creepy look and said, word by word, for days from now, you'd better really get lost. Then she turned and went back into the bedroom. Slamming the door again with a bang, Lin Feng stood there awkwardly, not knowing what to do. I calmly continued preparing lunch, as if the farce that had just happened had never occurred. Sister Zhou, Lin Feng finally broke the silence. I'm sorry. Jing, no need to explain. I cut him off. I suggest you pay more attention to your wife's mental state. If postpartum depression is severe, it can lead to dangerous behavior. Lin Feng's expression changed. You mean, she might hurt herself? I didn't answer, just gave a meaningful glance in the direction of the nursery. Lin Feng's face turned pale in an instant. In the afternoon, while Zhu Jing was taking her nap, Lin Feng went out again to work. I checked the positions of the surveillance cameras to make sure they were working properly. Then I sent Mrs. Zhang a message to confirm the handover details for 3 days later. Just as I was tidying up the nursery, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. May I ask if this is Miss Zhou? A female voice asked. I'm Manager Lin from Sunshine Housekeeping. My heart tightened. Sunshine Housekeeping was the company I was affiliated with. Had Zhu Jing really gone to file a complaint? Yes, I'm Zhou. Miss Zhu Jing just called and asked to terminate the contract. Early, Manager Lin's voice was laced with confusion, but she refuses to pay the penalty for breach of contract, and she also said she wanted to complain about you. What happened? I briefly explained the situation and informed her that I had complete work records as evidence. After hearing this, Manager Lin visibly breathed a sigh of relief. That's good, the company will handle it, just finish the contract as originally planned. After hanging up, I let out a long breath. It seemed Zhu Jing was determined to drive me away, even to the point of taking it to the housekeeping company. Luckily, I had been prepared all along. At dinner, Zhu Jing did not show up. Lin Feng came back very late, looking utterly exhausted. He told me that Zhu Jing had locked herself in the bedroom all day, refusing to see anyone and not even taking care of the baby. Sister Zhou, he hesitated for a moment. Could you, please go check on her? I knocked on the door, but she wouldn't open it. I had originally wanted to refuse, but thinking of that innocent child, I still nodded. I gently knocked on the master bedroom door. Mrs. Zhu, would you like dinner? No response. I knocked again. Baby Mrs. Yu. The door suddenly opened. Zhu Jing stood at the doorway, her eyes swollen and red, clutching a phone in her hand. I noticed that her nails had been bitten ragged, and the wound on the ring finger of her right hand had started bleeding again. Stop pretending, she hissed. Aren't you just dying for me to disappear so you can take my place? I kept my voice calm. I'm only passing along Mr. Lin's words. The baby does need a mother. Zhu Jing's gaze suddenly grew dazed. A mother? Am I fit to be a mother? She looked down at her hands. I can't even control myself. At that moment, I almost felt sorry for her, but the pain of that knife stabbing into my abdomen in my previous life instantly snapped me back to reality. Would you like me to call a doctor for you? I asked in a businesslike tone. Zhu Jing suddenly raised her head, the vulnerability in her eyes instantly replaced by anger. Get out. The door slammed shut in front of me again. Back in the guest room, I carefully checked all my belongings and confirmed that there were no signs that anything had been searched through. Then I took out the little notebook from under the pillow and recorded everything that had happened today. Zhu Jing's emotional breakdown, her baseless accusations, her refusal to fulfill her responsibilities as a mother, all of these were important evidence. I closed the notebook and glanced at the calendar. There were 3 days left until the contract ended. 3 days, neither long nor short. I took out my phone and sent a message to Wang Feng, the postpartum nanny I knew in the neighborhood. Do you have the contact information for Zhu Jing's previous nanny? Wang Feng replied quickly. You mean Sister Liu? She went back to her hometown. Why are you asking all of a sudden? Just asking, I replied. Is she happy with her work? Happy? Wang Feng sent a sneering emoji. I heard she was tortured by Zhu Jing to the point of almost getting depressed. In the end, she terminated the contract early and left. My heart tightened. It seems Zhu Jing's problems had been brewing for a long time. I wasn't the cause. Just as I was about to shut down and go to sleep, a text from an unknown number suddenly popped up. be careful on the last day. I stared at this cryptic warning, and a chill ran down my back. Who sent it? What did it mean? Could it be? My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but in the end, I didn't reply. In any case, there are only 3 days left. I'll be twice as careful and make it through these last days safely. Outside the window, a waning moon hung high, casting a ghastly pale light in the darkness. In the nursery, the baby suddenly started crying, the sound especially piercing in the silent night, but this time, no one went to comfort him. The last day, I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. For a long time, since my rebirth, I had been waiting, or rather, fearing, the arrival of this day. In my previous life, Zhu Jing ended my life with a fruit knife on the last day of my contract. The sunlight outside the window was bright and beautiful, completely different from that bloody day in my memory. I glanced at my phone, 6:30, half an hour earlier than the alarm. I quickly got out of bed and checked the luggage I had already packed once more. All important items have already been packed, leaving out only the few clothes and toiletries needed for today. I hid the small notebook that recorded Zhu Jing's unusual behavior in my inner pocket. At 7 o'clock sharp, I appeared in the kitchen on time unexpectedly. Zhu Jing was already sitting at the dining table, with a cup of steaming coffee in front of her. She was wearing a light blue dress, her hair carefully styled, and even wearing light makeup, looking as if she were about to attend some important occasion. "Good morning, Sister Zhou," she smiled and greeted me, her voice unbelievably soft. The hairs all over my body stood on end. This abnormal friendliness was even more frightening than yesterday's hysteria. I nodded and replied cautiously, "Good morning, Mrs. Zhu. You're up very early. It's the last day." Zhu Jing took a sip of coffee. "I want to say a proper goodbye." I turned my back to her and started preparing breakfast, feeling her gaze crawl over my back like a poisonous snake. The sharp fruit knife from the kitchen utensil rack was gone. "Where is Mr. Lin?" I asked casually. "I went on a business trip. It was decided last night at the last minute." Zhu Jing's voice was still soft. He said, "Anyway, with you taking care of the two of us, mother and daughter." My heart sank. Lin Feng wasn't home, which meant that if Zhu Jing really intended to do something, there wouldn't even be anyone there to stop her. When the murder happened in my previous life, there had only been the two of us at home as well. Breakfast ended in eerie calm. Zhu Jing even praised the porridge I cooked as delicious and took the initiative to help me clear away the bowls and chopsticks. This abnormal kindness made me even more wary, and I walked carefully with every step. At 10 in the morning, Zhu Jing suddenly suggested giving the baby a bath. "Zhou, it's the last day. Could you teach me the proper way to bathe the baby?" She blinked at me with an earnest, humble expression. "You've always been the one doing it before, and I just can't seem to learn." I nodded and followed her into the nursery. Seeing us, the baby excitedly waved their little hands. My heart clenched. After today, I would never see this little one again. The bath went unexpectedly smoothly. Zhu Jing learned very seriously, to the point that I even began to wonder whether I was being too suspicious. But when she lifted the baby out of the tub, I noticed her right hand was trembling slightly, her nails digging deeply into her own palm. "You did very well." I handed her the bath towel. "You just need to be a little gentler." Zhu Jing's smile froze for a moment, then returned to its sweetness. Sister Zhou really knows how to teach people. At noon, Zhu Jing took the initiative to help me prepare lunch. "It's the last day, and I should start learning to cook something too," she said with a smile. "I can't keep relying on takeout and the postpartum nanny forever, can I?" I became alert. The kitchen, the knives, being alone together, this scene was far too similar to the previous life, but I didn't refuse. I just quietly checked the pepper spray in my pocket and the phone's recording function. "Let's start with something simple." Zhu Jing took a few tomatoes and eggs out of the fridge. "Teach me how to make scrambled eggs with tomatoes." I stood beside her, keeping more than an arm's length away, and briefly explained the steps. Zhu Jing's movements were clumsy but earnest. It really looked as if she just wanted to learn how to cook. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe the course of this life has already changed. "Zhou," Zhu Jing suddenly said, her voice dropping a few notches. "Do you think I'm a bad mother?" That question caught me off guard. I chose my words carefully. "You're just lacking in experience." Lin Feng said the same thing. She gave a bitter smile, the knife in her hand scraping roughly over the tomato. "He said I was too tense, too sensitive, said I wasn't as good as you at taking care of children." I quietly stepped back half a pace. "Every mother has her own way, but he prefers your way." Zhu Jing suddenly turned around, the knife in her hand slicing a glint of cold light through the air, the way he looks at you, the name he calls out in the middle of the night, it's all you. My heartbeat almost stopped. That knife, it was the fruit knife that killed me in my previous life. Mrs. Zhu, you've misunderstood. I kept my voice steady and slowly moved toward the door. Mr. Lin and I only have a working relationship. Lying. Zhu Jing's face twisted, and her sweet mask shattered completely. I saw it. Your photo's on his phone. He called you dear in the middle of the night. That wasn't me. I kept backing away, reaching into my pocket to grip the pepper spray. Maybe it was a work contact. Shut up. Zhu Jing raised the knife and advanced toward me, a wild light flickering in her eyes. It's the last day. You think I'd let you just walk away, go off to the next person he's arranged for you. My back hit the refrigerator. There was nowhere to retreat. Zhu Jing's face was inches from mine. I could smell the bitter coffee on her breath, mixed with a hint of alcohol. Do you know, she suddenly laughed, her voice sickeningly sweet. Under criminal law, disfigurement carries a lighter sentence than murder. Now, I quickly pulled out my pepper spray and aimed it at her eyes, then pressed down. Zhu Jing let out a scream, the knife in her hand slashing wildly. I sidestepped to avoid it while pressing the play button on my phone. You're just a maternity nanny. What gives you the right to bully me and steal my husband and baby? Zhu Jing's own voice came from the phone speaker. It was exactly the recording of her threatening me in the nursery that early morning. Zhu Jing was stunned, her swollen eyes widening even more. You recorded it, a professional habit. I quickly moved around to the other side of the dining table, keeping a safe distance from her, just like keeping work records, to protect myself. Despicable, Zhu Jing roared, lunging at me again with the knife raised this time. I blocked her wrist with the tray and, in one motion, used a joint lock to pin her against the tabletop. The knife clattered to the ground. Let go of me. Zhu Jing struggled, spittle flying. You bitch, thief. Just then, the front door suddenly opened. Lin Feng stood at the doorway, staring in shock at the scene before him. I was pinning down his wife, and a knife lay on the floor. Sister Zhou. Jing, what happened? Zhu Jing's expression changed instantly as she burst into tears. Honey, she wanted to kill me. She threatened me with a knife. I let go and picked up my phone to replay the recording. Zhu Jing's threatening words echoed clearly through the kitchen. Lin Feng's face slowly turned pale. Jing, you, his voice trembled. Did you really say all that? Zhu Jing's expression shifted from aggrieved to shocked, and finally twisted into something ferocious. Yes, I said it. So what? That bitch seduced my husband and stole my child. I wish I could. Enough, Lin Feng roared. I had never heard him speak so loudly. Sister Zhou has always been professional. You're the one being paranoid. Zhu Jing froze as if struck by lightning. She looked at her husband, then at me, and suddenly let out a shriek unlike a human voice, grabbed the knife, and rushed outside. Lin Feng grabbed her in his arms, and the two of them struggled and fell to the ground. I calmly called the police, then retreated to a safe corner. Zhu Jing kicked and bit like a madwoman, completely unlike her usual refined and elegant self. Lin Feng finally wrested the knife away, but several bloody scratches had already appeared on his face. 10 minutes later, the police arrived. I provided the recording and work records, and Zhu Jing was taken away for a psychiatric evaluation. As she left, she looked back at me once, and that gaze froze my blood, exactly the same as when she stabbed me in my previous life. I'm sorry, Sister Zhou. Lin Feng slumped on the sofa, his voice hoarse. I should have realized something was wrong with her sooner. I didn't respond. I just started cleaning up the kitchen. The police took the knife away as evidence, but lunch still had to be prepared. Where's the baby? Lin Feng suddenly remembered something and stood up in a panic. In the nursery, sleeping, I replied. I suggest you hire a professional nanny. Miss Zhu may not be suitable to care for the child in the short term. Lin Feng nodded, tears in his eyes. Sister Zhou, could you stay a few more days, until I find someone to take over? I stopped what I was doing and looked him straight in the eye. Mr. Lin, the contract ends today. My luggage is already packed. He opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something else, but in the end he only nodded wearily. I understand. Thank you for taking care of me these past 3 months. By 3 in the afternoon, all my luggage had already been moved to the doorway. In the nursery, the baby was still sound asleep. I gently touched his little face, my heart a mixture of emotions. I'll take good care of him, Lin Feng said at the doorway, and also, I'm truly sorry about Jing. I handed him a USB drive. This has the parenting notes I edited. and some records of Miss Zhu's behavior. It might come in handy. Lin Feng took the USB drive, his expression complicated. Thank you, you're much more responsible than we are. Taking one last look at the house that had once cost me my life, I picked up my suitcase and left without looking back. As I walked out of the residential complex gate, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Zhang. Sister Zhou, is 9 o'clock tomorrow morning okay? I'll send a car to pick you up. No problem, I replied with a smile. See you tomorrow. After hanging up, I took a deep breath of the air of freedom. 3 months after my rebirth, I finally broke free from the nightmare of my past life and moved toward an entirely new one, yet in some corner of my heart, I still couldn't help wondering, would Zhu Jing receive psychotherapy? Would Lin Feng be a good father? Would that innocent baby grow up happily? The answers to those questions were no longer any of my concern. I hailed a taxi and drove toward my new life. Sunlight streamed in through the floor-to-ceiling window, casting diamond-shaped patches of light on the floor. I gently rocked the newborn in my arms, humming a soothing lullaby. The little one yawned, slowly closing its eyes, long eyelashes casting two shadows across its rosy cheeks. Miss Zhou, you're practically a magician. Mrs. Zhang leaned against the doorframe, her eyes full of admiration. Xiaobao never takes more than 5 minutes to fall asleep in your arms. I smiled and gently placed the baby into the cradle, then tiptoed out of the nursery. You'll get used to it. Every baby has its own rhythm. We just need to find it. 3 months had passed. It had been 3 months since I left Zhu Jing's home. Over those 90 days, I had rediscovered the dignity and joy of being a maternity matron in Mrs. Zhang's home. Mrs. Zhang is a single mother who is reasonable, respects professional boundaries, and never oversteps. Her baby is also much easier to care for than Zhu Jing's child, and rarely cries or fusses for no reason. Sis Zhou, Mrs. Li just called and wants to ask if you can go help her next month, Mrs. Zhang said, handing me a cup of floral tea. I told her that I'd have to ask you directly. I took the teacup, and its fragrance rose in a warm mist. Mrs. Li, is that the one I met at the parent-teacher conference last time? Right, that's her. Mrs. Zhang smiled. You're now the star of our circle, and everyone's lining up to wait for your schedule. I took a sip of tea, and a trace of warmth rose in my heart. In my previous life, I was also a top-tier maternity nurse, but I was never this in demand. After being reborn, I learned to maintain a professional distance, and instead won even more respect. The phone suddenly vibrated. It was a message from Wang Feng. Sister Zhou, I heard Zhu Jing has been sent to a psychiatric hospital. Lin Feng is filing for divorce and is fighting for custody. My fingers hovered above the screen, and for a moment I didn't know how to reply. This outcome was both expected and yet stirred up complicated emotions in my heart. What's wrong? Mrs. Zhang keenly noticed my unusual reaction. I handed her the phone to look at. Mrs. Zhang quickly skimmed the messages and sighed. This is the employer you had before. I nodded and briefly described Zhu Jing's mental state and our final conflict, leaving out, of course, the parts about rebirth and murder. Oh my, Mrs. Zhang covered her mouth. You must have been terrified at the time. It's more regret than anything else. I looked out the window. A perfectly good family ruined like that. Mrs. Zhang shook her head. It's not your fault. Postpartum depression is very common, but for it to develop to that extent, there must have been signs long before. Her words reminded me of my past life. If I had kept my distance back then, just as I do in this life, would Zhu Jing's suspicion have stopped short of leading to murder? Unfortunately, I'll never be able to know. In the afternoon, while the baby was sleeping, I went to a nearby cafe to meet Wang Feng. As soon as she saw me, she couldn't wait to share the latest gossip. Zhu Jing has been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, Wang Feng said in a low voice. I heard that in the hospital she even attacked a nurse, saying the nurse was seducing her husband. I stirred my coffee, but there was no pleasure in my heart as I had imagined, only a faint sense of pity. Where's the child? For now, Lin Feng is taking care of him, Wang Feng said with a pout. But how would a grown man know how to care for a baby? He's looking everywhere for a nanny. He didn't contact you again? Wang Feng suddenly asked. I heard he asked several people for your contact information. My hand trembled slightly, and a few drops of coffee splashed out. Lin Feng is looking for me. Why, no. I wiped the table clean. We ended things long ago. Thank goodness. Wang Feng patted her chest dramatically. A family like that is best avoided as far away as possible. By the time I left the cafe, a light rain had begun to fall from the sky. I didn't bring an umbrella, but I wasn't in a hurry to go back. The fine rain fell gently on my face, like a kind of baptism. 3 months ago, I left Zhu Jing's home filled with hatred and fear. 3 months later, I was actually able to calmly think about that family's tragedy. Time really is the best medicine. The phone rang again, this time from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, then still answered it. May I ask if this is Miss Zhou Wen? A professional female voice asked. I'm Director Liu from the Maternal and Child Health Hospital. Next month, we'll be holding a postpartum care seminar, and we'd like to invite you as a guest to share your experience. I was a little surprised. Me? Why me? Mrs. Zhang and Mrs. Li strongly recommended you, Director Liu said with a smile. They said you're especially good at handling complicated family relationships and can avoid crossing the line while still remaining professional. I see. I thought about it for a moment and accepted the invitation. Perhaps my experiences, whether the lessons from my past life or the experiences of this one, could really help others. On the day of the lecture, the venue was packed with expectant parents and new moms and dads. I stood on the stage, sharing the key points of night nanny work. The most important thing is to set clear boundaries. We are professionals, not family members. Too much emotional involvement can actually have the opposite effect. Someone in the audience raised a hand. Teacher Zhou, what should we do if a new mother is emotionally unstable or even suspicious of you? That question stabbed into my memory like a small knife. I took a deep breath. First, maintain professional distance and don't get drawn into family conflicts. Second, keep detailed records of your work to protect yourself. Finally, if the situation is serious, I recommend terminating the contract in time. Wouldn't that seem too cold? One pregnant woman asked anxiously. Being professional doesn't mean being cold, I said with a smile. Just as doctors need to maintain an appropriate distance when treating patients, we're also helping families get through a special period, but helping doesn't mean replacing. After the lecture ended, several expectant mothers gathered around me to ask for more details. One of them suddenly said, Teacher Zhou, you explain things so well, it's like you've experienced it yourself. My smile froze for a moment. Every experienced postpartum nanny has seen all kinds of family situations. What matters is learning from them and avoiding repeating the same mistakes. That night, the TV at Mrs. Zhang's home was airing a legal program about a case in which a mother suffering from postpartum depression hurt her infant. Looking at the haggard woman on the screen, I suddenly thought of Zhu Jing. Where was she now? Had she received treatment? Was she getting better? Terrible. Mrs. Zhang shook her head and sighed. If we had intervened earlier, perhaps it wouldn't have come to this. Yes, I echoed softly. If I hadn't been so eager to help in my previous life, if I had discovered Zhu Jing's abnormality earlier, too many ifs, but time only moves forward. A month later, I received an email. The sender was Sunshine Home Care Training Center, inviting me to serve as their special lecturer and teach a course titled The Professional Boundaries and Self-Protection of Maternity Matrons. Attached to the email was also a list of students. As I casually browsed through it, a familiar name suddenly caught my eye. Lin Feng. My heart skipped a beat. He signed up for a maternity nanny course. Why? After much hesitation, I replied to the email accepting the invitation, but requested to review the background information of all the students. On the first day of class, I arrived at the training center an hour early and carefully went through the student files. Lin Feng's file was very simple. A single father with one son, now 5 months old. The purpose of studying was to better take care of the child. The classroom gradually filled up, mostly with young women, though there were also a few middle-aged aunts. Lin Feng was the last to come in, still holding a baby in his arms. He looked much older, with gray already at his temples, but his movements in caring for the child were clearly much more practiced. When he saw me on the podium, he was obviously stunned, then showed an expression that was both awkward and pleasantly surprised. I pretended not to recognize him and began the lesson as usual. During the break, Lin Feng took the initiative to come over. Sister Zhou, I didn't expect it to be you. I nodded. Mr. Lin, long time no see. I'm now raising the child on my own. He gave a bitter smile and patted the baby in his arms. The little one is very healthy, but cries all the time at night. This age is normal, I replied professionally. You can try white noise. We chatted for a bit about parenting, and the atmosphere was unexpectedly calm. In the end, Lin Feng hesitated for a moment. Jing, she's much better now, and she's receiving treatment regularly. That's good. I said sincerely. Sis Joe, he suddenly lowered his voice. That day, thank you for not pursuing it. If you had called the police, it's in the past. I interrupted him. What matters is now. He nodded gratefully and carried the child back to his seat, watching his back. The last stone in my heart finally fell into place. The course lasted 6 weeks, and Lin Feng arrived early for every class, taking notes very carefully. At the end of the final class, he deliberately stayed behind to wait for me. And Mrs. Joe, could I invite you to dinner privately? He asked nervously, just to thank you for your classes, and for what happened before. I politely declined. There's no need, Mr. Lin. Taking good care of the child is thanks enough. I understand. He lowered his head. Actually, I wanted to ask you a question. Go ahead. You think? He hesitated. Should I let Jingjing see the child? The doctor said she's stable now. But this was a difficult question. I thought for a moment. I'm not an expert, but if I had to suggest something, you could try a brief visit with a professional present. Lin Feng nodded gratefully. Thank you. That helps me a lot. He turned to leave, then suddenly looked back. Oh, right, Sister Joe, that warning text you received that day. I sent it. I widened my eyes. What? I saw Jingjing sharpening a knife, and muttering your name. His voice trembled. I wanted to stop her, but the company suddenly sent me on a business trip, so I had no choice but to text you as a warning. So that was it, the warning from that unknown number was actually sent by Lin Feng. There was no such intervention in my previous life. Perhaps it was because Lin Feng had completely failed to notice his wife's abnormal behavior back then. Thank you, I said sincerely. That text message really helped a lot. He smiled and left, holding the child. The sunlight streamed in from behind him, casting the father and son's shadows long. 6 months later, my postpartum caregiver training course became hugely popular and was even rolled out to other cities. With Mrs. Zhang's encouragement, I founded my own professional postpartum caregiver training institute, with a very simple name, Boundary. On the opening day, many peers and former clients came. Wang Feng came with a few sisters to show their support, and Mrs. Zhang helped me receive the guests. Even Lin Feng came too, bringing along a baby who could already sit up. Principal Zhou, say a few words, Wang Feng heckled, standing on the small podium, looking at the faces below, some familiar and some unfamiliar. I suddenly felt a lump in my throat. Thank you all for coming to the opening ceremony of Boundaries. I composed myself. The name of this organization is a truth I learned through painful, blood and tear lessons. Love and help need boundaries. Professional and personal lives need boundaries. Only healthy boundaries can make relationships last and make help effective. Amid the applause, I saw Lin Feng quietly wipe the corner of his eye. After the event ended, Mrs. Zhang was the last to leave. She gave me a hug. Sister Zhou, I'm proud of you. After seeing everyone off, I sat alone in the brand new office, with the walls covered in photos of students and babies. On the desk were grand opening flower baskets. On one of the cards it said, "Thank you for teaching us the importance of boundaries, Student Lin Feng." I picked up my phone and found Zhu Jing's photo. It was taken of her at a parent-teacher meeting, smiling brightly, with no sign at all of the madness that came later. After much hesitation, I ultimately chose not to delete it. This memory, whether it is the pain of my past life or the redemption of this one, is all part of who I am. Outside the window, the sun was setting, turning the entire city golden. The profiles of a new batch of trainees were piled on the desk, waiting for me to review them tomorrow. Each and every one of them would learn how to draw a clear line between love and professionalism, and how to offer the best help without crossing boundaries. I gently stroked those file folders, and the corners of my mouth curled up unconsciously. After being reborn once, I finally learned the most important lesson. Only by keeping my distance can I truly help. Only by drawing clear boundaries can I truly care. And this is exactly the lesson I want to teach every postpartum caregiver. After hearing this story, what do you think? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section. I look forward to hearing your voice.